Get out of here before I throw you into this trash pile, Sergeant Cole Harlan threatened, his oversized hand still driving a crowbar into the front door frame. He turned toward the other 6 officers, scattered across the porch and yard, his mouth twisting into a grin. Keep going. Don't worry about that little girl. The hammering started again. Dust burst from the doorway. Wood split. A drawer crashed, spilling cards. A hat box and framed photographs rolled into the dirt. Maya Williams stood at the curb with a black suitcase beside her and a bouquet of white lilies in her hand. The house had once been yellow, soft yellow, the kind of yellow a woman chose when she wanted a tired street to remember sunlight. Now the paint was scarred with crowbar marks. The porch rail hung loose, and the front door gaped open like someone had forced the house to scream. Maya had come home to collect what was left of her mother. 7 officers were already taking it apart. What would you do if you came home from burying your mother? What if you found badges stomping through her memories? What would you call the law when it wore mud on its boots and laughed? Harlan stepped down from the porch. His badge flashed under the afternoon light. His eyes carried the lazy confidence of a man who believed the whole town already belonged to him. You Evelyn's girl? He asked. Maya looked at the crowbar in his hand. Yes, Harlan chuckled. Then you're late. Officer Ray Dutton laughed from the porch. He was red-faced, thick-necked, and eager, the kind of man who thought cruelty made him brave. He lifted a small wooden jewelry box, shook it once, then tossed it onto a pile of broken trim. Harlan kept his eyes on Maya. Your mama signed this place over. City condemned it. Public safety hazard. We're clearing dangerous material. He pulled a packet from under his arm and slapped it against her chest hard enough for the pages to bend. Read slow if you need to. The papers dropped at her feet. Maya lowered the lilies, bent, and picked up the top sheet. Evelyn Williams's name sat under a block of city language. At the bottom was a signature. Smooth, careful, almost pretty. Too pretty. Her mother's fingers had grown stiff in the last years of her life. Evelyn did not write soft letters anymore. She pressed each stroke into the page like signing her name was a fight she refused to lose. This signature had been practiced. It was the work of a healthy, steady hand trying too hard to look weak. But it lacked the genuine, jagged friction of a woman fighting her own joints. Maya folded the paper once. Harlan grinned. Nothing to say? She looked up. A lie doesn't get stronger when it's shouted. Dutton hopped down from the porch with a framed photograph in his hand. Maya recognized it before he turned it toward her. Her mother in a Sunday dress, Maya beside her in a graduation gown, both of them standing in front of that same yellow house. Dutton whistled. Look at this, Sarge. Little princess and her mama. Harlan leaned closer. Maybe she wants to file a complaint. Maybe she thinks complaints scare us. Dutton let the frame fall. Glass cracked against the walkway. Maya's face did not change. That bothered them more than anger would have. She stepped forward, picked up the photograph, and brushed dirt from Evelyn's smile with her thumb. Dutton moved close enough to crowd her shadow. You don't hear me laughing? He said. Maya rose slowly. I hear noise. His jaw tightened. Noise? Empty things make plenty of it. The yard went still. Harlan's grin thinned. For 1 second, the mask slipped, and the man underneath showed through. Not a public servant, not a peace officer, just a bully irritated that his favorite weapon had failed. Then he laughed too loudly. Cuff her, he said. Careful now. She's grieving. We're gentlemen. Dutton smiled and reached for her shoulder. Officer Travis Holt came in from the other side, one hand already angled toward his cuffs. Maya shifted 1 step back. Not in retreat, but into open view of the neighboring window where Mrs. Ruth Patterson's phone had been recording from behind a curtain. Holt grabbed her wrist. The white lilies tumbled into the dirt as Holt clamped his fingers down. Maya didn't look down. She snapped her hand inward, rolled his grip off like peeling wire from a post, pinned his wrist down, and dropped him to one knee before his cuffs cleared the case. Dutton lunged. She cut sideways, checked his elbow, turned his own momentum into the patrol car, and let his baton clatter uselessly onto the pavement. 2 movements. 2 officers stopped. No blood. No broken bones. No wild swing for Harlan to parade before a camera. Maya released Holt and raised both hands before anyone could shout the word, resist. I am not resisting lawful authority, she said, her voice flat and clear. I am defending myself against an unlawful seizure of private property. Harlan stared at her. The smile was gone, only for a breath. Then pride dragged it back onto his face. Strip mall self-defense, he said, spitting the words like gum gone sour. That's all that was. Don't stand there looking like you're dangerous, girl. You're just loud, in a quieter way. Maya held the cracked photograph against her side. You're on my mother's property. Was her property? Harlan snapped. That's the word you people never learn. Was. This was her house. This was your neighborhood. This was a place the city tolerated because nobody with money wanted it yet. Dutton straightened near the patrol car, embarrassed and redder than before. Let me take her in, Sarge. Harlan lifted one hand without looking at him. His eyes stayed locked on Maya. You hear me clearly, sweetheart. In Greenville, the law doesn't live in some book you can wave around. It lives right here. He tapped his badge. I write one line, and you become the threat. I say you attacked officers, and they believe me. I say you interfered with a lawful order, and you spend the night in a cell while this place comes down before breakfast. Maya glanced at the packet in her hand. Then, write carefully. Dutton took half a step forward. Still got that mouth. Maya turned her eyes to him. Still making noise. Harlan's nostrils flared. He raised the crowbar slightly. Not enough to swing, just enough to remind her he had it. Listen to me, little girl. Your mama lost. This house lost. Cedar Hollow lost. You just came home in time to watch us clean up the mess. Behind him, one of the officers dragged Evelyn's Bible from the mud with the toe of his boot and shoved it toward the broken steps. Maya's gaze followed it. The air tightened. Harlan noticed. He smiled again, cruel and easy. That bother you? Maya did not answer. She walked past the edge of the porch, knelt, and picked up the Bible. Mud streaked the cover. One corner was bent. She gathered the bruised lilies from the dirt with her other hand, then rose. She wiped the Bible with the sleeve of her coat and placed it carefully on the porch rail that had not yet fallen. A sedan turned onto Cedar Hollow Lane. Blue lights flashed once, then cut off. Detective Lena Ortiz stepped out with the controlled patience of someone who had learned not to trust the first story told at any scene. She took in the broken doorway, the scattered belongings, Holt on one knee, Dutton rubbing his pride near the patrol car, and Maya standing with flowers in one hand and a cracked photograph under her arm. Sergeant Harlan, Ortiz said. I need to see the demolition order. Harlan forced his grin back into place. Detective, this is Greenville jurisdiction. Ortiz looked past him at the ruined porch. Then the paperwork should be easy to show. He held the folder out as if doing her a favor. Ortiz read the first page, then the second. Her eyes stopped at the signature line. The inspector who signed this retired 6 months ago. Harlan shrugged. System probably hasn't updated. Ortiz looked at him. Systems don't sign names for retired inspectors. No one laughed now. The dust kept drifting out of Evelyn Williams's front door. The lilies in Maya's hand had begun to sag. The cracked photograph pressed against her coat like a second heartbeat. Harlan leaned toward Maya one last time, lowering his voice so the others would not hear the anger under it. You think you won something today? Maya looked at him. You just made yourself my personal problem, he said. For the first time since she arrived, Maya almost smiled. Good. One word. Cold as a lock clicking shut. Ortiz ordered the officers to step away from the house until the documents were verified. Harlan obeyed, because too many people were watching, but his eyes promised he would return. As the 7 officers withdrew, curtains opened along Cedar Hollow Lane. Elderly neighbors stood in doorways. Phones lowered. Fear loosened its grip just enough for people to breathe. Maya remained beside the broken porch, holding flowers meant for a grave, and a photograph split by a crack across her mother's face. The 7 badges had come to bury a house. They had no idea they had just awakened a witness. The street did not become safe when the patrol cars left. It only became quiet enough for people to remember they were afraid. Maya stood at the edge of the broken porch, holding the damaged lilies, the cracked photograph, and the forged paper. Across Cedar Hollow Lane, curtains shifted and doors cracked open. Mostly old faces appeared, the kind that had watched this street vanish. One funeral, one foreclosure, and one city notice at a time. Detective Lena Ortiz stayed in the yard, silently rereading the demolition packet. Her thumb moved down the page with the patience of someone who knew corruption always hides in dull language. "Miss Williams," Ortiz said, "do you have identification showing your connection to the property?" Maya set the lilies on the porch rail beside the Bible. "My license is in my suitcase. My mother's will is supposed to be inside the house. If they didn't throw it out." Ortiz looked toward the doorway. "I'll go in with you." "No," Maya said. The word wasn't loud or hostile, but Ortiz heard the steel in it. Maya stepped over broken trim into the dust-filled living room. The couch was shoved sideways, a lamp lay crushed on the floor, and decades of family papers littered the carpet. She stopped at the threshold, remembering her mother sitting here on Sunday evenings, or the small Christmas trees from the lean years. Now a boot print marked the wall beside the family calendar. Maya inhaled once through her nose, slow and controlled, then crossed the room. Ortiz remained at the doorway. "I know this is difficult." Maya opened a drawer that had been dumped upside down. "Difficult is when a pipe bursts. This is intentional." Ortiz accepted the correction. "Yes, it is." Maya found her mother's old metal document box under a pile of curtain rods. The lock had been broken, but the contents were still inside. She lifted out a folder labeled House in Evelyn's neat handwriting. The sight of that handwriting did what Harlan could not. It made Maya pause. Maya handed the folder to Ortiz, who compared the genuine records with the paper Harlan had dropped. Ortiz's mouth tightened. "This is not the same signature." "No," Maya said. "Whoever forged it copied an old version from before her arthritis set in. They didn't know her hand had changed." Ortiz looked up. "You're sure it's forged?" Maya held her gaze. "I'm sure enough to say it in court." A voice spoke from outside. "Baby?" Maya turned. Mrs. Ruth Patterson stood near the porch steps, her phone clenched tightly in her hand. Small, silver-haired, and wearing mismatched buttons on her cardigan, her wet eyes carried the tired fury of a woman who was done being afraid. Maya stepped back onto the porch. "Mrs. Patterson." Ruth reached for her, then stopped, as if unsure whether grief wanted touching. Maya closed the distance and let the older woman take her hand. "I'm sorry I didn't come out sooner," Ruth said. "I should have. I saw them pull up. I saw that big one with the crowbar. You recorded." Ruth lifted the phone. "Not enough. Enough to matter." That seemed to steady her. More neighbors gathered at a cautious distance. Henry Carter leaned heavily on his cane next to his wife Louise, who still wore her Sunday pearls. Near the sidewalk, Marcia Green stood with crossed arms and pressed lips, while Thomas Reed watched the empty end of the street from his mailbox. By the driveway, a teenager named Andre Miller gripped his phone with a solemn, silent intensity. Ortiz looked at the gathering crowd. "If any of you witnessed what happened, I'll need statements." Henry gave a dry laugh. "Statements? We've been giving statements for months." Louise touched his arm. "Henry, no, let me say it." He pointed his cane toward the broken house. "Miss Evelyn called. Ruth called. I called twice when they started parking patrol cars outside our place at midnight. Nobody came then." Ortiz did not flinch. "I'm here now." Thomas Reed shook his head. "No offense, detective, but that's what they all say when the damage is already done." Maya studied them. Fear had not left these people. It had simply stepped aside to make room for anger. Ruth turned to Maya. "Your mother wasn't the first." Maya's eyes narrowed slightly. "First what?" "First house they came for." "The street seemed to lean closer," Henry said. "They sent us an offer last winter. $38,000 for a house I paid off in 1999. Said it was a generous relocation opportunity." Louise's voice was gentle but sharp underneath. "When we refused, we got a warning about our porch steps. Then, a fine for the shed. Then, Officer Briggs sat outside our house 3 nights in 1 week." Marcia Green lifted her chin. "They wrote me up for high grass the same day my lawn service left. Said if I kept making trouble, Child Services might want to know whether my home was safe for my niece. My niece is 21, but they didn't care about facts. They cared about scaring me." Andre stepped forward. I saw Officer Doyle meet a man from Southern Crown behind the barber shop. There was an envelope. Ortiz turned to him. You recorded it? Andre hesitated. Ruth answered for him. He's scared. Andre looked ashamed. I'm not scared for me. Maya spoke before Ortiz could. You're scared for who comes after you when everyone else goes home. Andre looked at her then. Something like recognition passed across his face. Yes, ma'am. The ma'am landed strangely. Maya was only 28, but pain had a way of making people address you like you had survived longer than your years. Ortiz closed the demolition folder. Southern Crown Development. That name keeps coming up. Ruth looked toward the far end of Cedar Hollow Lane, where a new billboard rose above the old grocery store. It showed clean townhomes, smiling couples, trimmed lawns, and the word Cedar Renewal, a safer future for Greenville. They call it renewal, Ruth said. But every drawing they show, we're not in it. Maya stared at the billboard. The rendering lacked everything that defined Cedar Hollow, the yellow house, the Baptist church, the barber shop, and the people. The neighborhood had been erased long before the machinery arrived. That was how the theft worked. First on paper, then in City Hall, and finally under a badge. Ortiz lowered her voice. Miss Williams, I can file an irregularity report today. I can flag the demolition order. But I need evidence, not just suspicion. That starts an inquiry. It doesn't stop powerful people by itself. I know. The answer came too quickly. Ortiz noticed. Her eyes lingered on Maya, measuring the calm, the posture, the way she had not once asked what to do next. You have legal counsel? Ortiz asked. Not yet. Get some. Maya looked back into the ruined house. I came here to bury my mother's life, detective, not open a case. Ruth's fingers tightened around her phone. Maya, your mama tried to fight them. Maya turned slowly. What do you mean? Ruth swallowed. She kept papers, took pictures, wrote down license plates. She said if enough of us put it together, they couldn't call us crazy anymore. Henry nodded. She was braver than the rest of us. No, Louise said quietly. She was scared too. She just didn't let that decide for her. That sentence moved through Maya like a blade wrapped in cloth. Evelyn had been scared. The idea was worse than the broken glass. Maya looked at the porch rail where the muddy Bible rested beside the bruised lilies. Why didn't she call me? Ruth's face softened with pity. She said you had your own life. Said you had already been through enough darkness. Maya's expression closed. Ortiz caught the change. So did Ruth. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Dutton's voice seems to echo in Maya's memory. Your mama lost. This house lost. Cedar Hollow lost. The words sat wrong. Not because they were cruel. Because he believed them. Maya folded the forged paper again and slipped it into the document box with Evelyn's real signatures. Where are the papers my mother kept? Ruth glanced toward the church at the end of the block. Reverend Price has some. Evelyn gave him copies. Take me to him. Ruth blinked. Now? Maya picked up the white lilies, though their stems were bent and dirty. Then, she lifted the Bible from the rail and held it against her chest with the cracked photograph. Yes, she said. Now. Ortiz stepped aside to let her pass. Miss Williams, Maya stopped. I'll stay here and secure what I can. But if Harlan comes back before this order is officially frozen, don't engage him alone. Maya looked toward the tire marks his patrol cars had left in front of her mother's house. He won't come back alone, she said. Ortiz frowned. That wasn't my point. I know. Maya walked down the steps with Ruth Patterson as the neighbors parted in silence. There were no cheers or smiles. This wasn't a victory yet. It was simply a match struck in a pitch-black room. At the end of Cedar Hollow Lane, the church bell rang once in the wind, though no one had pulled the rope. The sound carried over the broken house, the waiting billboard, and the people who had spent too long whispering behind curtains. Maya did not look back. She had come home for the remains of her mother. Now she was following the trail Evelyn had left behind. Cedar Hollow Baptist sat at the end of the lane, with its white paint peeling in thin curls and its wooden cross leaning slightly to the left. In daylight, it looked small. At night, with the porch lamps glowing yellow against the dark windows. It looked like the last place on the street, still willing to keep watch. Ruth Patterson climbed the steps slowly, one hand on the rail, the other wrapped around her phone as if it had become a weapon she did not know how to use yet. Maya walked beside her with the Bible, the cracked photograph, and the damaged lilies gathered in her arms. Dust from the house still marked her coat. A streak of mud crossed one sleeve where she had wiped Evelyn's Bible clean. Inside, the church smelled of old wood, lemon polish, and coffee that had sat too long in the fellowship hall. Folding chairs were stacked against the wall. A corkboard near the entrance held flyers for a senior luncheon, a blood pressure clinic, and a canned food drive. Beneath them was a handwritten card in blue ink. "Pray for Miss Evelyn's family." Maya stopped when she saw it. Ruth noticed but did not speak. Grief had rooms inside it, and some doors opened without warning. A light came on near the front pews. Reverend Samuel Price stepped out from the side hallway, wearing a gray cardigan over his shirt and collar. He was 72, narrow-shouldered, with silver hair and eyes that had spent a lifetime seeing people on the worst day of their lives and choosing gentleness anyway. "Ruth," he said. Then his gaze moved to Maya. "Lord, have mercy." Maya looked at him across the sanctuary. Reverend Price. He came down the aisle, not quickly, but with purpose. When he reached her, he did not hug her. He looked at the lilies, the Bible, the cracked photograph, and seemed to understand that her hands were already carrying all they could bear. "I heard the sirens," he said. Then Ruth called. "They were inside my mother's house." "I know." The answer was too heavy. Maya's eyes sharpened. "You know what? Exactly?" Reverend Price looked toward Ruth. She lowered her eyes. He exhaled. "I know Evelyn was afraid they would come when you weren't here." The church seemed to tighten around Maya. She placed the Bible on the nearest pew with care. Then she set the lilies beside it. The cracked photograph stayed in her hand. "What did my mother tell you?" she asked. "Enough to make me wish I had done more." "That isn't an answer." "No," he said softly. "It's a confession." Ruth sat in the front pew, suddenly looking older than she had on the street. Maya remained standing. Reverend Price walked to a small office beside the pulpit and unlocked a filing cabinet. He removed a brown accordion folder, tied with string. Evelyn's handwriting appeared on the front in black marker. Cedar Hollow Records. Maya stared at the words. Her mother had labeled it like a school project. Neat, plain, almost harmless. The Reverend carried it to the communion table and untied the string. Inside were copies of letters, photographs, handwritten notes, city notices, envelopes, and scraps of paper with license plate numbers. There were names Maya recognized from childhood, and names she did not. Carter, Green, Reed, Patterson, Miller, Williams. Not one house. A street. Maya touched the first page. "How long?" "8 months that I know of," Reverend Price said. "Maybe longer." Ruth spoke from the pew. "Your mama came here after the first city notice. Said something about it didn't smell right." Maya almost smiled at that. Evelyn had always said lies had a smell. Reverend Price opened the folder wider. At first, she thought it was just her. Southern Crown sent an offer. She refused. Then came a warning about the porch. Then a letter saying the back steps were unsafe. Then patrol cars started passing by late at night. Who signed the letters? Different names. Different departments. That was what made it hard. He picked up several pages and laid them side by side. But Evelyn noticed the timing. Offer first, refusal, inspection, violation, pressure, always in that order. Maya looked at the documents. The paper trail was rough, but the pattern was there. It sat beneath the surface like a bone under skin. Did she go to the police? Ruth gave a bitter little laugh. Baby. The police were the ones sitting outside her house. Reverend Price's voice dropped. She filed a complaint anyway. 2, I believe. Maybe 3. The last one named Sergeant Harlan. Maya's fingers stilled. Where is it? He searched through the folder and pulled out a photocopy. Here. The complaint was dated 6 weeks before Evelyn died. Maya read the first lines, then the next. Evelyn's words were careful, formal, almost too polite. She described late-night patrols, threats disguised as warnings, officers entering her yard without permission, and Sergeant Cole Harlan telling her that old houses fall harder when owners get stubborn. Maya read that sentence twice. Something cold moved through her. What happened after she filed this? Reverend Price did not answer right away. Maya looked up. What happened? The city said they never received it. Ruth lifted her phone. But I drove her there. I watched her hand it to a woman behind the counter. Name? Maya asked. Couldn't see it. Young woman, brown hair, red sweater. Evelyn asked for a receipt. They told her the system was down. Maya folded the copy along its original crease. Convenient. Yes, the Reverend said. A lot of things became convenient. He pulled out photographs next. One showed a patrol car parked across from Evelyn's house at 117 a.m., according to the timestamp. Another showed a Southern Crown SUV near the barber shop. Another captured Officer Frank Doyle speaking with a man in a charcoal suit beside a black pickup. The images were grainy, angled, imperfect, but they were not nothing. Maya arranged them in a line. Did she tell anyone else? Caleb Brooks, Ruth said, at Channel 6. He came by once, sat in Evelyn's kitchen, almost 2 hours. Maya looked at her. Did he run the story? No. The word hung in the room. Reverend Price looked ashamed on Caleb's behalf. He said he needed more proof. Then his producer killed the segment. Southern Crown buys a lot of ads. Maya's thumb pressed against the cracked edge of the photograph in her hand. Money buys silence cheap when people are already tired. The Reverend nodded. Your mother said something like that. Maya's face shifted, just barely. What exactly? He searched his memory. She said, they don't need everybody to be evil, Reverend. They just need enough good people to be busy, scared, or polite. For the first time since she stepped inside, Maya sat down. That sounded like Evelyn. Too much like her. The tired school teacher who still corrected grammar on church flyers. The woman who mailed thank you notes after potlucks. The mother who had never let Maya leave the house without saying, stand up straight. People will try to make you smaller, if you help them. Maya looked toward the sanctuary doors. Why didn't she call me? Reverend Price sat across from her. She said you had finally found peace somewhere else. Maya's laugh was quiet and empty. She was wrong. Maybe. But she believed it. She should have told me. Yes, he said. And maybe you should have asked more questions when she said she was fine. That is how regret talks, Maya. It always finds a way to blame the living. The word struck clean. Not cruel. Clean. Maya looked down at Evelyn's Bible on the pew. Mud still clung to the seam despite her wiping it. Was she scared? Reverend Price answered without decoration. Yes. Maya closed her eyes. Outside, a car passed slowly in front of the church. Its engine hummed, paused, then continued down the lane. Ruth turned toward the window. That's the third pass tonight. Maya opened her eyes. Harlan? No, Ruth said. Dark SUV. No markings. Reverend Price stood and moved toward the blinds, but Maya lifted a hand. He stopped. She rose, crossed to the side window, and looked through the narrow gap without touching the curtain. At the far corner, taillights disappeared behind the old grocery store. Someone was watching the church. Good. That meant the folder mattered. Maya returned to the communion table and began stacking the copies into clean piles. Complaints, notices, photos, names, dates. She did not explain what she was doing. Her hands moved with a calm rhythm that made both Ruth and the Reverend fall silent. After a minute, Reverend Price said, Maya, what are you going to do? She placed Evelyn's complaint on top of the first pile. I'm going to find out who needed my mother quiet. Ruth's eyes filled again. And, after that, Maya looked at the folder labeled Cedar Hollow Records. Then at the sanctuary, the old pews, the bulletin board, the names of people who had spent years trusting systems that had learned to ignore them. After that, she said, we stopped letting them handle us one house at a time. The church bell outside shifted in the wind, giving one low wooden groan. Reverend Price studied her face. Your mother was afraid this fight would pull you back into something. Maya picked up the cracked photograph and slid it carefully into the folder. It already did, Ruth whispered. Into what, baby? Maya tied the folder shut. For a moment, it looked like she might answer. Then she lifted Evelyn's Bible, gathered the lilies, and turned toward the door. Into the dark, she said. But this time, I know the street. The church basement became a war room before anyone called it that. Reverend Price pulled 2 folding tables together beneath the buzzing fluorescent lights. Ruth found a roll of masking tape in a supply drawer. Maya opened Evelyn's folder and laid out the papers by date, not by family. That mattered. Families made the pain personal. Dates made the crime visible. Henry Carter arrived first, wearing a brown jacket over his pajama shirt and pretending he had not hurried. Louise came behind him with a plastic container of butter cookies, because women of her generation still brought food to rooms where people might cry. Marcia Green came in work shoes, arms folded, eyes sharp. Thomas Reed carried a thermos of coffee and an old manila envelope. Andre Miller arrived last, hood pulled low, phone gripped in his hand. Nobody sat right away. People over 45 know the weight of a church basement at night. They know the smell of old coffee and floor wax. They know folding chairs can hold grief, gossip, funerals, potlucks, and sometimes the beginning of a fight nobody wanted, but everybody needed. Maya stood at the table with Evelyn's Bible, near her left hand, and the cracked photograph near her right. She did not introduce herself. Everyone already knew whose daughter she was. In a neighborhood like Cedar Hollow, bloodlines traveled faster than news. Reverend Price cleared his throat. Before we begin, I want everyone to understand something. No one is required to speak. No one is required to give Maya anything. Fear is not shameful. Thomas Reed gave a bitter grunt. Fear may not be shameful, Reverend, but it sure is expensive. Maya looked at him. How expensive? Thomas opened his envelope and slid out 3 city notices. First one was for a loose gutter. Second was for trash in the yard. Wasn't my trash. Third said my back steps were unsafe. They gave me 10 days to repair them or face further action. After you refused to sell? Maya asked. He nodded. 2 weeks after. Offer came from Palmetto Renewal Partners. Never heard of them before. They offered me $42,000 for a house my wife and I paid off after 30 years. Louise Carter shook her head. They offered us $38. Same company? Maya asked. No, Henry said. Ours said Hollow Creek Holdings. Marcia stepped closer to the table. Mine was Safe Streets Housing Initiative. Sounded like a charity. Turned out to be some mailbox office near Columbia. Maya wrote the names down in Evelyn's old notebook. Her handwriting was smaller than her mother's, tighter, built for speed. Ruth watched her hand move. Evelyn did the same thing. Maya did not stop writing. Good. Andre shifted by the stairs. What does that mean, though? Different names. Different offers. Maybe they'll say that proves it ain't connected. They will, Maya said. That is why we do not argue from feeling. We argue from sequence. Henry frowned. Sequence? Maya pointed to Thomas's notices, then to Louise's offer letter, then to Evelyn's complaint. Offer, refusal, inspection, violation, police presence, pressure, second offer, threat, condemnation. That order matters. If the same order repeats across enough homes, different company names become camouflage. Marcia studied her. You talk like a lawyer. Maya kept sorting. Lawyers talk longer. That earned the first tired smile in the room. Reverend Price poured coffee into paper cups. Louise passed cookies around. No one wanted them at first. Then Ruth took one. After that, everyone did. There was something almost holy about older people eating cookies while discussing how their homes had been stolen. Ordinary life, refusing to leave the room, even when fear had a seat at the table. Maya taped a sheet of butcher paper to the wall. Across the top, she wrote Cedar Hollow timeline. Start with the earliest offer, she said. Henry raised his cane slightly. Mine. January 14. Maya wrote it down. Thomas said. Mine was February 3. Marcia added, March 9. Ruth said Evelyn's first offer came March 22. Reverend Price found the copy in the folder and confirmed it. Andre gave the date he saw Doyle behind the barber shop. April 6, 8:40 p.m. He had not wanted to say the time. Not until Maya asked how sure he was. "I was leaving my evening shift," he said. "I work at the hardware store. I clocked out at 8:30. Walk takes 10 minutes. You saw Doyle take an envelope?" Maya asked. "I saw him take something flat and white from a man in a gray suit. Could have been papers. Could have been cash. I don't know." "Good," Maya said. Andre looked confused. "Good? Good that you said what you saw, not what you think it means. That keeps you credible." The room absorbed that. It changed the way people spoke. Less guessing. More facts. More dates. More names. Ruth had video from the afternoon at Evelyn's house. Maya asked her to make 2 copies before midnight. Ruth blinked, then nodded as if someone had just promoted her from scared neighbor to evidence custodian. "My grandson taught me cloud storage," Ruth said. "He's 32 and thinks I don't know anything because I still write checks. Tonight, he becomes useful," Marcia said. Ruth smiled, despite herself. "Amen to that." Maya turned to Reverend Price. "Do you have a copier?" "In the office. It jams if you look at it wrong. Then we look at it politely." This time, the laugh was real. Brief, but real. It faded quickly when headlights swept across the small basement windows. Everyone froze. The light passed once, vanished, then returned. Thomas lowered his coffee. "Same SUV?" Ruth moved toward the window, but Maya caught her wrist lightly. Not hard. Just enough. "No silhouettes," Maya said. "What?" Ruth whispered. "If you stand in the window, they know how many people are inside." That silenced the room more effectively than a shout. Andre stepped away from the stairs. "Are they watching us?" Maya looked at the basement door, then the windows, then the papers spread across the table. "Yes." Louise's voice trembled. "Who?" "The people who don't want this wall filled." Reverend Price started toward the stairs. "I'll go speak with them." "No," Maya said. The word stopped him. He turned. "This is still my church, and that is exactly why you should not be filmed confronting a vehicle tonight. By morning, they will say a pastor harassed city personnel during an active safety investigation." He stared at her. She added, "They do not need truth. They need footage." The headlights disappeared again. This time, they did not return. Henry sank into a chair. "Lord help us." Maya resumed taping documents to the butcher paper. Marcia stared at her. "How are you this calm?" Maya pressed a city notice flat against the wall. "I'm not." "You look calm." "That is different." Nobody knew what to say to that. A few minutes later, Detective Ortiz appeared at the basement door. She had changed out of her jacket, but not out of her alertness. She looked at the timeline, the documents, the faces, and then at Maya. "You move fast," Ortiz said. "They move faster," Maya replied. Ortiz came down the steps. "I filed the irregularity report. Officially, demolition is paused pending verification of the order." Henry snorted. "Officially." Ortiz heard the distrust and did not argue with it. "Unofficially. Harlan is already calling everyone he knows. My captain got a message from Greenville City Hall asking why state police are interfering with municipal redevelopment." Ruth folded her arms. "Redevelopment? That's a pretty word for throwing folks away." Ortiz looked at the wall again. "This is more than one house." "Yes," Maya said. "I'll need copies of everything." "You'll get copies. Not originals." Ortiz's eyes narrowed slightly. "You don't trust me?" Maya looked at her straight. "I don't know you." The answer was blunt, but not insulting. Ortiz seemed to respect it. "Fair." Maya pointed to the forged transfer. "Can you confirm the retired inspector?" "I already did. Harold Benson. Retired 6 months ago. Moved to Savannah. His daughter says he's recovering from a stroke and hasn't signed city documents since last year." The room stirred. Reverend Price murmured, "That should stop them." Maya looked at him. "It should." Louise caught the difference. "But it won't?" Maya did not soften the truth. Not by itself. Ortiz stepped closer to the wall. "If this connects to Southern Crown, we need financial records, internal communications, proof of coordination." Andre lifted his phone halfway. "What about video?" "Video helps," Ortiz said. "But they'll call it misunderstanding unless we show the machine behind it." "The machine?" Thomas repeated, disgusted. Maya wrote the word Southern Crown at the far right of the butcher paper. Then she drew lines from each shell company toward it, leaving question marks where proof was missing. This is what they count on, she said. Each family thinks their trouble is private. Each notice looks boring. Each officer says he is only doing his job, but a machine only stays invisible when people stare at one gear at a time. The basement went quiet. That was the moment the story changed shape. It was no longer just Evelyn's house. It was not even just Maya's grief. It was a map, a living map made of old mortgages, forged signatures, patrol cars, scared witnesses, polite letters, and money hiding behind clean logos. Ortiz's phone buzzed. She checked the screen, and her expression hardened. "What is it?" Maya asked. Harlan filed his report. Ruth's hand went to her mouth. "Already?" Ortiz read from the phone. "He claims you assaulted 2 officers, obstructed a lawful demolition, and made threatening statements." Dutton's cracked pride had found a pen. Marcia cursed under her breath. Maya did not react. "Does he mention the retired inspector?" "No." "The forged signature?" "No." "Mrs. Patterson's video?" "No." "Then he wrote exactly what I expected." Ortiz looked at her. "You expected this." Maya picked up the cracked photograph and placed it in the center of Evelyn's folder. "He told me he could write one line and make me the threat." The room seemed to chill. Reverend Price rested both hands on the back of a folding chair. "Maya, child, what do we do now?" She looked at the wall of dates and names, then at the people gathered beneath it, tired and frightened, but still there. "Now," she said, "we make sure his one line meets 100 pages. Outside, somewhere down Cedar Hollow Lane, a car door closed. No one spoke. Maya reached for the copier paper. "Start with 3 copies of everything." The copier in Reverend Price's office protested like an old man asked to climb stairs. It groaned, jammed, flashed a red light, swallowed one city notice sideways, and forced Ruth Patterson to slap the top with the authority of a woman who had raised 3 children and outlived 2 washing machines. "Don't you die on us now," Ruth muttered. Louise Carter stood beside her, sorting copies into piles. "Talk nice to it." "I am talking nice. If I wasn't, it would know." For a few seconds, the basement almost sounded normal. Paper sliding, coffee pouring, chairs scraping, older folks arguing with a machine as if the machine had joined the conspiracy. Then the copier coughed out another page, and everyone remembered why they were there. Maya worked at the folding table with Detective Ortiz across from her. The timeline on the wall had grown teeth. Dates, names, shell companies, inspection notices, patrol car sightings. Every page looked harmless alone. Together, they looked like a trap that had been built around Cedar Hollow, plank by plank. Ortiz tapped one of the offer letters. Palmetto Renewal Partners, Hollow Creek Holdings, Safe Streets Housing Initiative. 3 different companies, same mailing address. Maya looked up. "Where?" Ortiz turned her phone around. "Suite 214, 900 Briar Street." Thomas Reed leaned over. "That's not an office building. That's a mailbox place beside the tax prep shop." Marcia Green gave a short laugh without humor. "So a mailbox tried to buy half the neighborhood." Henry Carter shook his head. "No, ma'am. Money bought the mailbox. The mailbox came for us." Maya wrote the address under all 3 company names and drew one thick line beneath it. Ortiz watched her. "You've done this before." Maya's pen stopped for less than a second. "Done what?" "Built a case from fragments. Anybody can organize paper." "No," Ortiz said. "Most people stack paper. You're building pressure." Maya returned to writing. "Pressure is what makes sealed things leak." Ortiz let that sit. She did not push. Not yet. At the other table, Andre Miller plugged Ruth's phone into Reverend Price's old laptop. The video from Evelyn's yard filled the screen. Harlan with the crowbar. Dutton dropping the photograph. Holt grabbing Maya's wrist. Maya moving too fast for the frame to love her. Then both officers stopped without blood, without spectacle, without the chaos Harlan would later describe. Andre rewound it twice. "Look," he said. Mrs. Patterson got Holt grabbing her first, clear as day. Ruth moved closer, squinting over her glasses. I may be old, but my hands don't shake when I'm mad. Maya came around the table. Make 2 copies. 1 cloud. 1 drive. Andre nodded. Already uploading. Ortiz looked at him. Send 1 to me. Andre hesitated. Maya noticed. Ortiz did too. She lowered her voice. Smart to hesitate. Don't hand evidence to anyone just because they ask with confidence. Ruth raised her eyebrows. That includes police? Ortiz met her eyes. Especially police. That answer changed the room's temperature. Not warmer. Cleaner. Andre sent the file. A knock sounded upstairs. Everyone froze. Not a polite tap. Not a church member's knock. 3 hard strikes against the front door, spaced like a warning. Reverend Price lifted his head. Maya closed Evelyn's folder. Another knock came, louder. Ortiz reached for her phone, not her weapon. Everyone stay down here. No, Reverend Price said. His voice had gone quiet in a way that made him seem taller. This is my church. Maya stepped toward him. Reverend, he looked at her gently. Child, I have buried men who thought being feared made them powerful. Let me answer my own door. He climbed the stairs before anyone could stop him. Maya followed halfway, staying out of sight near the landing. Ortiz came behind her. From the hallway above, they heard the front door open. Evening, Reverend, Harlan's voice said. It rolled through the church like oil. Reverend Price answered. Sergeant, little late for fellowship, isn't it? People come to the Lord at all hours. Harlan laughed. That what we're calling it? There was a pause. Maya pictured him looking past the Reverend, trying to see inside. We got reports of a gathering, Harlan said. Possible witness intimidation. Possible interference with city operations. This is a church meeting. With evidence being copied, Reverend Price did not answer quickly enough. Harlan continued, pleased with himself. Now, Reverend, I respect men of God. I surely do. But you start letting angry folks use your basement to obstruct lawful demolition work, and this church could find itself with fire code problems, occupancy issues, kitchen permits. You know how paperwork gets. Maya's fingers curled once against the stair rail. Ortiz whispered, Don't. Maya did not move. Reverend Price's voice stayed calm. Are you here with a warrant, Sergeant? Harlan's silence was small but satisfying. No warrant, he said. Just concern. Then, your concern has been received. The door began to close. Harlan stopped it with his hand. Tell Maya Williams this for me. She can stack all the paper she wants. At the end of the day, paper burns. The words hung in the hallway. Reverend Price replied. So do lies, Sergeant. They just smoke longer. The door shut. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved. Then Harlan's boots crossed the porch. A car door opened. Another closed. An engine started and rolled away. Maya came down the stairs first. Ruth was standing now, face pale with anger. He threatened the church. No, Maya said. He warned us what he plans to target. Louise pressed a hand to her chest. How can he say things like that and still wear a badge? Maya looked at the timeline. Because he has worn it too long without consequence. Reverend Price returned to the basement. His hands trembled slightly when he reached for his coffee. He noticed Maya noticing and gave a thin smile. Fear is not shameful, he reminded her. No, Maya said, but it is informative. Ortiz stepped toward the table. This is escalating. If he's threatening the church, he knows the documents matter. Or someone told him we were copying them. Marcia said. The room turned quiet. Suspicion moved fast in small spaces. It touched everyone and apologized to no one. Andre looked at Ortiz. Thomas looked toward the stairs. Henry looked at the papers. Ruth hugged her phone close. Maya let the silence stretch, but not long enough to rot. Assume every call can be repeated, she said. Assume every text can be forwarded. Assume every person in this room is scared enough to make a mistake, not evil enough to betray you. Marcia's shoulders lowered a fraction. Ortiz nodded once. That's a useful distinction. It will keep this room from eating itself. Reverend Price took his seat. So what now? Maya walked back to the butcher paper and wrote 3 words at the top in heavy black marker. Proof. Witnesses. Motive. Proof is paper and video. Witnesses are people willing to say what happened. Motive is Southern Crown. We have pieces of all three. Not enough yet. Henry said. How much is enough? Enough that when they call one person confused, 10 others answer. Enough that when they say one document is an error, 20 documents show the same error. Enough that when Harlan writes one line, it lands under 100 pages. Ruth looked at the wall. Your mama would have liked that. Maya's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed even. My mother should not have had to start it. No, Louise said softly. But she did. That was the truth no one could soften. Near midnight, Ortiz gathered her copies and left through the side door. Andre uploaded Ruth's video to 3 separate accounts. Thomas promised to bring old tax assessments in the morning. Marcia said she had every fine they had sent her in a shoebox. Henry and Louise offered inspection letters, photographs, and the first buyout offer from Hollow Creek Holdings. The room emptied slowly. Older neighbors moved carefully up the steps, whispering goodnight, telling one another to lock doors, call when they got home, leave porch lights on. It was the language of people who had lived long enough to know courage still needed practical instructions. Ruth lingered near Maya. You coming to my house tonight? I've got a guest room. Bed's made. Maya shook her head. I need to go back. To that broken house? Yes. Maya, baby. Why? Maya looked at the folder in her hands. Because Harlan expects me to run from it. Ruth's eyes softened. And because it still feels like your mama? Maya did not answer. She did not have to. Reverend Price walked her to the church door. The night outside was cool and still. At the far end of Cedar Hollow Lane, the billboard for Cedar Renewal glowed above the dark roofs, like a promise made by someone else over stolen land. The Reverend said, Evelyn once told me justice was not fair. Maya turned slightly. What did she mean? She said, Justice asks the wounded to keep receipts, while the powerful keep smiling. Maya looked down at the brown folder tied with string. Then she looked toward the broken yellow house waiting in the dark. Then we keep receipts, she said. She stepped off the church porch, carrying the Bible, the lilies, the cracked photograph, and the first shape of a case no one in Greenville was ready to face. By sunrise, Cedar Hollow no longer looked asleep. It looked like it was holding its breath. Porch lights stayed on long after the night had ended. Curtains parted when Maya passed. A dog barked once from behind a chain-link fence, then quieted as if even animals understood something had changed. The broken yellow house sat in the morning light, with its front door wounded, its porch scarred, and its rooms exposed to the street. Harlan's crowbar marks had not faded. Neither had his words. Maya stood in the living room with a flashlight in one hand and Evelyn's folder on the kitchen counter. There was no electricity. The utility company's automated voice had told her service had been interrupted for safety verification. That was the phrase they used. Safety verification. 2 clean words hiding a dirty hand. She had slept for 90 minutes on the floor beside the couch, not because she was tired enough to rest, but because exhaustion could make a person sloppy. Before dawn, she had walked through every room and photographed what remained. The broken drawer, the boot print on the wall, the damaged Bible, the missing document box lock, the scrape marks along the doorframe, the lilies, now bruised beyond saving, lay in a glass jar on the counter because Evelyn would have hated seeing flowers thrown away. Maya was labeling photographs when Ruth Patterson knocked once on the open door and stepped in without waiting for permission. I brought coffee, Ruth said, holding up a thermos. And before you say no, save your breath. You look like you argued with the floor all night and lost. Maya glanced at her. Good morning to you too. Good morning is for people who slept. Ruth set the thermos on the counter beside a paper bag. Inside were 2 biscuits wrapped in foil and a small container of peach preserves. Maya looked at the food as if it belonged to a language she had forgotten. My mother used to make biscuits on Saturdays, Maya said. I know. She made them too dry and blamed the oven. A small breath escaped Maya. Not quite a laugh, but close enough for Ruth to notice. She did blame the oven. She blamed that oven for 20 years. That oven never got to defend itself. For a few seconds, the house held something warmer than grief. Then Ruth looked around at the damage and the warmth left. Henry and Louise are ready, she said. Marcia, too. Thomas is digging through tax papers. Andre said he can meet after his shift. Maya checked her notes. We start with the Carters. You sure you don't want Detective Ortiz here? No, not yet. Ruth studied her. You still don't trust her? I trust what she did yesterday. I don't trust the route information takes after it leaves her hands. That's a hard way to live. Maya capped her pen. It's kept people alive. Ruth did not ask what people. That was the kindness of older women. They knew when a closed door had blood behind it. Henry and Louise Carter lived 2 houses down in a brick ranch with a plastic eagle above the mailbox and a porch swing that had not moved in years. Henry opened the door before Maya knocked. He wore pressed slacks, a cardigan, and the expression of a man determined not to be pitied in his own home. Louise had set the dining table with coffee, napkins, and a plate of sliced pound cake. The table itself was covered in documents: mortgage papers, tax assessments, repair receipts, city notices, and a buyout offer printed on thick white paper. Sit, baby, Louise said to Maya. You can investigate on your feet after you eat something. Maya almost refused. Then she saw the look in Louise's eyes and sat. There were rules in homes like this. You did not reject food from a woman who was scared and trying to remain useful. Henry tapped the buyout letter. Hollow Creek Holdings sent this January 14. Offered $38,000. For the whole property? Maya asked. And acted like they were doing us a kindness, Louise said. Said we could relocate with dignity. Henry's mouth twisted. I fought in Vietnam. Worked 32 years at the rail yard. Paid this place off early. I don't need a mailbox company teaching me dignity. Maya wrote the phrase, relocate with dignity, in her notebook. What happened after you refused? First inspection came February 2, Henry said. Officer Briggs came with a city man. Said someone reported sagging porch boards. Were they sagging? My knees sag. The porch is fine. Louise slid a receipt across the table. We had it repaired the year before. Licensed contractor. Passed inspection. Maya photographed the receipt. Then, second notice came February 16, Henry said. Back steps unsafe. Then a warning about electrical hazards. Then, Harlan came by himself. Maya looked up. What did he say? Louise folded her hands. Her wedding ring was loose on her finger. He stood right where you're sitting and told Henry that old men shouldn't make young officers nervous. Henry stared at the table. He said if I tripped during an argument, folks might think I came at him. No one spoke for a moment. There are threats that do not need volume. There are threats that sit down at a dining table, call you sir, and leave fingerprints on the air. Maya's voice stayed level. Did he mention the house? He said accidents happen in condemned properties, Louise answered. Then he asked whether our daughter could afford a lawyer for us. Your daughter is grown? 49, Henry said. Lives in Atlanta. Maya wrote that too. Adult family referenced as pressure point. Louise pushed a photograph toward her. It showed a patrol car parked across the street in the dark. The date stamp read 1/12 a.m. How many nights? Maya asked. 5 that month, Louise said. Henry added. After that, I stopped sleeping good. Maya looked at the older man's hands. They rested flat on the table, but the fingers flexed now and then, as if still holding tools from a job long finished. They wanted you tired, she said. Henry's eyes lifted. Tired people sign things, Maya continued. Scared people sign faster. Louise's face tightened. Your mother said. Almost those exact words. Maya's pen stopped. Louise reached for a small envelope near the sugar bowl. Evelyn came here 3 weeks before she passed. She brought this. Said if anything happened, we should make sure you got it. Maya did not take the envelope immediately. Ruth, standing near the kitchen archway, whispered, Lord. The envelope was cream-colored, the kind Evelyn used for church thank-you notes. Maya's name was written across the front in the tight, painful handwriting of her mother's last years. Maya opened it carefully. Inside was a single index card. Baby, if Ruth or Louise gives you this, it means I could not hand it to you myself. Do not waste time being angry that I kept quiet. I was your mother, before I was anyone's witness. I wanted you free. But Cedar Hollow is not free. Follow the offers. Follow the inspections. Follow who profits when old people get tired. Love. Mama. Maya read it once. Then again. The room blurred at the edges, but her hands did not shake. Louise reached across the table, but stopped before touching her. She loved you something fierce. Maya folded the card and placed it back in the envelope. I know, but the words sounded like a woman trying to convince herself. Henry cleared his throat. There's one more thing. He stood slowly and walked to a cabinet near the hallway. From the top shelf, he brought down a small flash drive taped to the back of an old railroad union card. Harlan and Briggs came back the night after Evelyn visited us, he said. They stood on the porch, talking low. Our doorbell camera caught some of it. Not much audio, but enough to hear Harlan say her name. Maya took the drive. Did you make a copy? Henry shook his head. Didn't know how. Ruth lifted her chin. Andre will. Maya closed her fingers around the drive. Until then, this doesn't leave my sight. Louise looked frightened. Will it help? Yes, Maya said. Enough? Maya thought of Harlan's badge, Whitcomb's billboard, the shell companies, the forged signature, the slow SUV outside the church, the utility shutoff dressed up as safety. One flash drive would not be enough. One witness would not be enough. One grieving daughter would not be enough. But a pattern had weight, and weight, applied correctly, could crack stone. It helps build the wall, Maya said. Henry nodded as if he understood. Then take every brick we've got. By late morning, Maya had photographed every document the Carters owned. Ruth helped Louise make copies on the small home printer in the back bedroom. Henry walked Maya to the door. On the porch, he lowered his voice. Miss Maya, yesterday when you moved on those officers, that wasn't luck. Maya looked at him. I know training when I see it, Henry said. Army taught me that much. Maya did not answer. He smiled faintly. That's all right. A person's past is their own property, long as they use it for the living. Maya slipped the flash drive into her coat pocket. Thank you, Mr. Carter. Don't thank me yet, he said. Win first. As Maya and Ruth stepped back onto the sidewalk, a white pickup rolled slowly past the Carter house. The driver wore sunglasses and kept his face forward. On the passenger door was a small Southern Crown Development logo. Ruth stiffened. That truck's been around all week. The pickup continued toward the billboard at the end of the lane, then turned right without signaling. Maya watched until it disappeared. Ruth whispered, What now? Maya looked down Cedar Hollow, at the houses with curtains moving, porch lights still on, and elders who had kept receipts because Evelyn Williams had taught them fear could be filed. Now we visit Marcia Green, she said, and we find out how many bricks this wall can hold. Marcia Green lived in a narrow blue house with a clean porch, 2 hanging ferns, and a security camera above the door that looked newer than everything else around it. She opened before Maya knocked. I saw the truck, Marcia said. Ruth glanced over her shoulder. Southern Crown, white pickup, logo on the side. They went slow enough to count the cracks in my driveway. Marcia stepped aside. Come in before they circle back. Inside, Marcia's house was warm, neat, and tense. A slow cooker sat on the kitchen counter, filling the air with the smell of beef stew and black pepper. A framed photo of Marcia in a nursing uniform hung beside a certificate from Greenville Technical College. On the dining table, a shoebox waited beside 3 stacks of papers tied with rubber bands. I keep everything, Marcia said. My mama kept receipts in coffee cans. Said the Lord sees all, but courts prefer paper. Maya almost smiled. Smart woman. Stubborn woman, Marcia corrected. There's a difference until it saves you. Ruth sat near the window but kept away from the curtains. The lesson from the church basement had taken root. No silhouettes. No easy count of who was inside. Marcia opened the shoebox. This is what they sent after I refused Safe Streets Housing Initiative. The first paper was a buyout offer. $51,000 for a house worth at least 4 times that. The language was polished, friendly, and poisonous. Relocation support, community transition, opportunity to participate in Greenville's future. Maya read the second page. They gave you 7 days to respond. They gave me 3 calls in 7 days, Marcia said. First one was polite. Second one said the offer might not stay generous. Third one asked if I understood city safety reviews were increasing in the area. Who called? Blocked number. Male voice. Didn't give a name. Maya wrote it down. Then the fines? Marcia slid the stack forward. High grass, improper trash storage, loose railing, unauthorized exterior structure. Ruth frowned. You don't have an exterior structure. Marcia pointed toward the back window. They meant my garden bench. Maya photographed the notice. Who signed the inspection? Deputy Inspector Allen. Maya paused. Same name as one of Thomas Reed's notices. Marcia's eyes narrowed. Funny how one man keeps finding things wrong after folks refuse to sell. Funny is one word. Marcia leaned back. I've got another word, but Reverend Price told me to watch my mouth before noon. Ruth gave her a look. It is afternoon somewhere. For a moment, the 3 women shared a thin line of humor. It did not last. Marcia pulled a final document from the box. This one came after I complained. It was a warning from the Greenville Police Department. The language accused her of interfering with a municipal process and creating unnecessary tension around lawful redevelopment activity. At the bottom was Sergeant Cole Harlan's name. Maya read the sentence twice. He put this in writing. Men like him think writing makes a thing true. No, Maya said. Men like him think nobody will make him read it back under oath. Marcia studied her face. You say things like that a lot. Maya looked up. Like court is already waiting somewhere, Marcia said. Most folks around here say, Lord willing. You say, under oath. Ruth turned toward Maya too. Maya placed the notice back on the table. Hope needs structure. Marcia did not look satisfied, but she let it pass. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. Maya's head turned. A young woman stepped into the kitchen carrying a laundry basket. She was 21, tall, wearing scrubs and a guarded expression. Marcia's niece. This is my niece, Danielle, Marcia said. She lives here while she finishes nursing school. Danielle nodded to Maya, then looked at the papers. This about Harlan? Yes, Marcia said. Danielle set the basket down. He came to my work. Ruth's mouth tightened. What? Marcia stood. You didn't tell me that. Danielle looked down, ashamed and angry at once. A week ago, he came by the urgent care clinic, asked if I liked living with my aunt, asked if the house had enough space, said young healthcare workers shouldn't get dragged down by relatives who don't know when to move on. Marcia's face changed. All the fire turned inward, then came back hotter. He said that to you? Danielle nodded. He didn't threaten me exactly. Maya's voice was quiet. He threatened your future. Instead, Danielle looked at her. Yeah. Maya wrote the date, location, and wording. Would you be willing to make a statement? Marcia answered first. No. Danielle looked at her aunt. Auntie. No. He came to your job. I'm not giving him another reason to mess with you. Danielle's face hardened. That's what he wants. Marcia turned away. I said no. The room held the kind of silence only family can make. Heavy with love. Heavy with fear. Heavy with all the things people do to protect one another and sometimes accidentally protect the people hurting them. Maya capped her pen. Marcia, she said, you can decide for yourself. Danielle decides for herself. Marcia looked ready to argue. Maya continued, but neither of you should decide inside panic. Write down what happened. Date it. Sign it. Keep it sealed if you need to. A statement does not have to go public today, to exist today. Danielle looked relieved. Marcia did not, but she sat down again. That's fair, Marcia said at last. I hate it, but it's fair. Ruth watched Maya with new curiosity. You sure you're not a lawyer? Maya gathered the copied fines. Very sure. Outside, a vehicle slowed. No one moved toward the window this time. They listened. Tires rolled over gravel. A radio crackled faintly. Then a knock hit the front door, hard enough to rattle the frame. Marcia whispered, That ain't a neighbor. Maya slid the papers into the shoebox and pushed it toward Danielle. Take this to the back room. Danielle did it without question. A second knock came. Marcia walked to the door with Maya a few steps behind her, out of direct view. Ruth stayed in the kitchen, phone already recording against the table edge. Marcia opened the door on the chain. Officer Nolan Briggs stood on the porch with Officer Frank Doyle behind him. Briggs had a polite smile and dead eyes. Doyle held a clipboard. "Afternoon, Miss Green," Briggs said. "We're conducting follow-up on a neighborhood safety concern." Marcia's voice stayed steady. "Do you have a warrant?" Briggs smiled wider. "No need for all that. Just checking compliance. Come back with paperwork." Doyle lifted the clipboard. "We have paperwork." Marcia glanced at it. "Then, leave it in the mailbox." Briggs leaned slightly toward the gap. "You got company in there?" Maya stepped into view. Briggs's smile twitched. "Miss Williams. Didn't expect to see you here." Maya said nothing. Doyle cleared his throat. "Sergeant Harlan advises all residents to avoid obstructing city processes, gathering documents, spreading allegations, intimidating witnesses. These things can create legal exposure." Marcia laughed once, sharp as a snapped twig. "You came to my porch to accuse me of intimidating witnesses?" Briggs ignored her and looked at Maya. "Some folks don't understand how serious this can get, especially folks already under review for assaulting officers." Maya's expression did not change. "Are you here to issue a citation?" "Not yet." "Then you're here to scare her." Doyle's jaw tightened. "Careful." Maya stepped closer to the door, still inside the house, still calm. "You came without a warrant, suggested legal consequences, asked who was inside, and referenced an open complaint involving me. That is not a safety check. That is pressure." Briggs leaned back, smile gone. "You always talk like a transcript?" Ruth's voice came from the kitchen, sweet and lethal. "Only when somebody's recording." Briggs's eyes flicked past Maya. Doyle lowered the clipboard. Marcia unhooked the chain just enough to open the door wider. Not out of fear now, but insult. "You heard her. Leave the paper in the mailbox." Briggs stared at Maya. "Harlan said you'd be trouble." Maya looked at his badge, then his face. "He says a lot." Doyle placed the notice in the mailbox with unnecessary force. The two officers stepped off the porch. Before leaving, Briggs turned back. "Folks who stand too close to fire shouldn't complain about smoke." Marcia shut the door. For a second, nobody spoke. Then Danielle returned from the hallway, shoebox in hand. "I'll write the statement." Marcia closed her eyes. Ruth stopped recording and whispered, "Lord, give us strength." Maya looked at the closed door. "He just gave us something else." Marcia opened her eyes. "What?" "A fresh act of intimidation after the irregularity report was filed." Maya turned to Ruth. "Save that video twice." Ruth lifted the phone. 3 times. They returned to the kitchen table. Danielle wrote her statement in careful block letters. Marcia signed copies of every fine. Ruth uploaded the porch video. Maya marked another line on the timeline. Post-report pressure. Briggs. Doyle visit Green residence. By the time they finished, the stew in the slow cooker had thickened, but no one was hungry. Marcia walked Maya to the porch. "I used to think if I kept my head down, they'd move to somebody else." Maya looked down the street toward Evelyn's broken house. That's what they trained everyone to think. And now they learn the problem with pushing people into corners. Marcia waited. Maya's eyes stayed on Cedar Hollow Lane. Corners connect. At the far end of the street, the Southern Crown billboard glowed in the afternoon haze, promising a safer future to people it planned to erase. Maya stepped off the porch with Ruth beside her and Danielle's sealed statement in her coat pocket. Behind them, Marcia locked her door, then turned the porch light on in broad daylight. Thomas Reed did not keep his papers in a shoebox. He kept them in an army footlocker at the end of his hallway, beneath a folded flag from his father's funeral, and a stack of service manuals for appliances he no longer owned. "My wife used to say I saved too much," Thomas said, kneeling slowly to turn the lock. "Receipts, warranties, old pay stubs, property tax bills. She said if paper could talk, this house would never shut up." Ruth stood near the door, still shaken from Briggs and Doyle's visit at Marcia's house. "Today, that might be a blessing." Thomas opened the footlocker. "That's what I'm hoping." His house smelled faintly of coffee and furniture polish. The living room was clean in the careful way of a widower who still arranged things as if his wife might walk in and notice dust. A quilt lay over the back of the couch. On the wall hung photographs from another life. Thomas, in work boots outside the textile plant. His wife smiling beside a church picnic table. 3 grown sons in graduation caps, all living in other states now because Cedar Hollow had never had much to offer the young except memory and obligation. Maya stood by the dining table as Thomas brought out folder after folder. Her coat pocket held Danielle's sealed statement. Her notebook had grown thicker with names, dates, and pressure points. Ruth's phone held 3 new uploads. By mid-afternoon, the case no one wanted was no longer a rumor. It had weight. Thomas placed a folder in front of Maya. This is where mine started. The offer letter came from Palmetto Renewal Partners. $42,000. Same phrases as the others. Community transition. Relocation, dignity. Responsible redevelopment. Maya scanned the page. 7-day response window. Same as Marcia, Ruth said. Thomas nodded. I ignored it. Then Officer Briggs stopped by with a city inspector. Said someone reported my back steps were unsafe. Maya looked toward the hallway. Were they? I built those steps myself in 2008. Treated lumber, concrete footers. I've got photos. He opened another folder and pulled them out. My youngest son helped. He was 31 then. Bad with a hammer, good with jokes. The inspection notice listed rotted boards, unstable railing, and trip hazards. The photos showed solid construction. Maya set the notice beside the photos. Who signed it? Deputy Inspector Allen. Ruth muttered. There he is again. Maya wrote Allen's name for the 4th time. Thomas leaned back in his chair. I filed an appeal. Went down to City Hall with my folder. Woman at the counter told me the hearing schedule was full. Said I'd receive a date by mail. Did you? No. What did you receive? He slid another paper across. Final notice of non-compliance. Maya read it. Issued before the appeal window closed. That's what I told them. And? They said I must have misunderstood. Ruth's mouth tightened. That is their favorite word for old folks. Misunderstood. Maya photographed the documents. Do you have proof you filed the appeal? Thomas reached into the folder and removed a small white slip. Parking receipt from City Hall. Same day. Time stamped. Maya looked at him. That matters. Thomas's face did not change much, but his shoulders lifted half an inch, like a man who had been told his memory still counted. A truck rolled past outside. Everyone went quiet. The engine slowed, then continued. Ruth exhaled through her nose. This is no way to live. Thomas closed the folder. We've been living this way longer than yesterday. Yesterday just made it loud. Maya looked toward the window but stayed away from it. Did Harlan come here personally? Thomas's jaw shifted. Once. What did he say? He said men my age fall all the time. Said if I got hurt on unsafe steps, my sons might sue the city for not acting sooner. Then he smiled like he was doing me a kindness. Maya's pen paused. He threatened you by pretending to protect you. That about sums it up. If you are listening to this and wondering how a threat can sound polite, ask any person who has had power, lean close, and smile. The words do not have to shout. They only have to tell you that the story has already been written without you. Maya wrote, Harlan's safety language as coercion. Ruth leaned over the table. Maya, what are we missing? Motive strong enough to connect the city to Southern Crown directly. Thomas pushed one final envelope toward her. Then maybe this helps. Inside was a photocopy of a city council meeting agenda from 2 months earlier. Cedar Renewal Corridor Feasibility Review. Attached was a page listing community partners. Southern Crown Development appeared halfway down. So did Safe Streets Housing Initiative. Maya's eyes narrowed. Ruth saw it. What? Safe Streets is one of the shell buyers. Thomas nodded. And on city paper, it is listed as a community partner. Partner in what? Ruth asked. Maya took a photo. In making theft look like policy. Her phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. She let it ring once. Twice. Ruth whispered, You going to answer? Maya tapped speaker. This is Maya. For 1 second, there was only breathing. Then Cole Harlan's voice came through, smooth with satisfaction. Busy day, sweetheart. Thomas stiffened. Ruth reached for her phone to record. Maya said, Sergeant, running around Cedar Hollow, stirring up old people, collecting sad little stories. You must be proud. What do you want? To save you trouble. Those folks cannot help you. They are scared for a reason. Maya glanced at Ruth's recording screen. Which reason is that? Harlan chuckled. Because they understand how Greenville works. Something you have not learned yet. Teach me. I already did. I showed you how fast a house can stop being yours. Next lesson is how fast a reputation can stop being clean. Maya looked at Thomas's documents spread across the table. Is that a threat? No. It is a weather report. Storm coming. Ruth's face hardened. Harlan continued. By tomorrow morning, people are going to know the truth about Maya Williams. Angry woman. Violent woman. Attacked officers while they were doing lawful work. Maybe unstable from grief. Maybe always unstable. Hard to tell. Maya's voice stayed level. You called to warn me about weather? I called because I am generous. Stop knocking on doors. Stop poisoning these people with false hope. Pack whatever you can carry, and leave town before this gets uglier. Thomas's hands curled into fists on the table, but he said nothing. Maya asked, Are you finished? Harlan's tone sharpened. You think silence makes you strong? No. Then what does? Letting men like you keep talking. The line went dead. Ruth saved the recording with shaking fingers. He just can't help himself. No, Maya said. He can't. Thomas looked at her. Will that call help? It shows intimidation after we began collecting evidence. Will anyone care? Maya met his eyes. We make them. A sharp knock came at the back door. Ruth nearly dropped her phone. Thomas stood too quickly, then steadied himself on the table. I wasn't expecting anyone. Maya raised one hand for silence and moved down the hallway. Not hurried, not dramatic. She approached from the side, staying out of the window's square of light. A voice called softly from outside. Mr. Reed? It's Caleb Brooks. Ruth came up behind Maya. The reporter? Maya opened the door only after Thomas nodded. Caleb Brooks stood on the back step with a messenger bag over one shoulder and the tired face of a man who had spent years telling himself one more compromise was not surrender. He was 55, gray at the temples, wearing a wrinkled button-down and carrying a camera small enough to hide under his coat. His eyes went first to Maya, then to Ruth, then to Thomas. I heard there was a meeting at the church last night, Caleb said. Maya did not invite him in. From who? He gave a humorless smile. In this town? Everybody hears everything. The question is, who admits it? Ruth folded her arms. You came to Miss Evelyn's kitchen and did nothing. Caleb took that without defending himself. Yes, ma'am. Thomas's voice was hard. You had her story. I had pieces. Caleb looked at Maya. And I lacked spine. That answer surprised the room more than an excuse would have. Maya studied him. Why come now? Because this morning my producer told me to stay away from Cedar Hollow before I even mentioned it. That means somebody called ahead. He reached into his bag and pulled out a file. And because Evelyn mailed me copies, I never used. I kept them. Ruth's anger faltered. You kept them? Yes, ma'am. Maya took the file but did not open it yet. You want redemption? Caleb's mouth tightened. I want the story right. That is not the same thing. I know. For a long moment, Maya stood in the doorway with the reporter outside and Cedar Hollow's papers behind her. Letting him in was risk. Keeping him out was also risk. Corruption loved silence, but it also loved careless exposure. Finally, she stepped aside. You record nothing without consent, she said. You publish nothing until we verify. You protect every source, or you become another tool in their hands. Caleb entered slowly. Understood. Maya closed the door. Thomas looked at the documents on his dining table, then at the reporter, then at Maya. Seems this wall just got another brick. Maya opened Caleb's folder. On top was a photograph of Evelyn Williams standing on her porch, one hand on the rail, staring down Sergeant Cole Harlan. On the back, in Evelyn's tight handwriting, were 4 words. He came again, today. Caleb Brooks did not sit until every person in Thomas Reed's dining room agreed to let him stay. That was Maya's rule. No camera on the table, no recorder running, no phone in his hand. He placed everything in plain view beside the salt shaker, then pulled out his chair like a man entering a room where he had not yet earned the right to be comfortable. Ruth Patterson watched him over the top of her glasses. "Miss Evelyn trusted you." Caleb lowered his eyes. "She did. And you let that trust sit in a drawer." "Yes, ma'am." Thomas Reed gave a low grunt. "At least he knows the shape of it." Maya opened Caleb's folder. The first photograph showed Evelyn Williams on her porch, back straight, one hand gripping the rail. Sergeant Cole Harlan stood below her, head tilted, mouth open mid-sentence. Behind him, Officer Frank Doyle leaned against a patrol car. The timestamp was 3 weeks before Evelyn died. On the back, Evelyn had written, "He came again today." Maya placed the photograph on the table. "What did she tell you?" Caleb took a breath. "She said Cedar Hollow was being squeezed." That was her word. Squeezed. She had letters, photos, inspection notices. She believed the police were helping Southern Crown push people out. "Did you believe her?" "I believed something was wrong." "That is not what I asked." Caleb looked at her then. The tiredness in his face deepened. "Yes, I believed her." Ruth's voice sharpened. "Then why didn't you run the story?" "My news director killed it." "You could have pushed." "I did. Not hard enough." "Why?" Caleb rubbed both hands over his face. When he spoke again, the words came out with the dull weight of old shame. Southern Crown had just bought a 6-month ad package. My station was already cutting staff. I have a mortgage, my wife's medical bills, a daughter who needed help with rent. I told myself I needed more proof. I told myself waiting was responsible. Maya watched him without softening. "And while you waited, my mother stood alone." The sentence landed clean. Caleb did not defend himself. Yes, the room stayed quiet. Outside, a lawnmower started somewhere down the block, then coughed off. Ordinary sounds kept trying to return, but the day would not let them. Maya turned the next page in Caleb's folder. It held copies of Evelyn's notes, but also something new. A list of campaign donations to Mayor Leonard Whitcomb. Several came from executives connected to Southern Crown. Others came from companies with names Maya had already written on the butcher paper. Hollow Creek Holdings, Palmetto Renewal Partners, Safe Streets Housing Initiative. She looked up. "Where did you get this?" "Public filings," Caleb said. "They're legal on paper. That's the trick. Each donation is under the limit. Different LLCs, different officers. Same lawyer filed the paperwork for most of them." "Name?" "Elliot Vance, real estate attorney. His firm also represents Southern Crown." Thomas leaned forward. "So the mailbox companies give money to Whitcomb. Whitcomb helps Southern Crown, and Harlan scares folks out of their homes." Caleb nodded. "That's the shape of it. But shape is not proof." Maya tapped the photograph of Evelyn and Harlan. "Then we make it proof." Ruth pointed to another page. "What's that?" Caleb slid it into the center. "City Council agenda. Closed session notes. Cedar Renewal Corridor was discussed before most residents received their first buyout offers. Marcia Green had come in through the back door during the discussion, Danielle beside her. They carried the sealed statement and copies of Marcia's fines. Marcia heard the last sentence and stopped cold. "Before?" she asked. Caleb nodded. "At least 6 weeks before." Danielle placed the statement on the table. So they already knew which houses they wanted. Maya looked at the donation records, the agenda, the shell company letters. They knew the land first. The violations came later. There it was, a cleaner sentence than anyone wanted. For listeners at home, understand what that means. It means the so-called safety crisis did not lead to redevelopment. The redevelopment plan needed a safety crisis. So one was manufactured house by house, notice by notice, fear by fear. Ruth sat down slowly. Evelyn knew. Maya touched the edge of the photograph. She was proving it. Caleb reached into the folder again. "There's more. She told me the barbershop camera caught Harlan and a man she didn't recognize outside her house. Tall, gray suit, no uniform. She thought he worked for Southern Crown." Andre Miller's head lifted. "Mr. Earl's camera? You know it?" Maya asked. Andre nodded. Earl Franklin's shop. Camera points right at the street. He keeps backups because somebody stole his copper pipes back in 2018. Ruth looked hopeful for the first time all day. Then there's still video. Caleb's expression tightened. Maybe. Maya caught it. Why maybe? Because if Evelyn told me, she may have told someone else. Or someone heard she told me. Marcia looked toward the closed blinds. Meaning Harlan could already know. Maya stood. Where is the barber shop? Across from the old grocery, Andre said. 5-minute walk. No, Ruth said immediately. No walking. Not after that truck. I'll drive. Thomas reached for his cane. I'm coming. You're staying, Louise said from the kitchen doorway. She had arrived with more coffee and the authority of a judge. You can barely stand after all this. Henry Carter, who had come with her, nodded toward Maya. I'll go. Louise gave him a look. Henry sighed. I will sit in the car like cargo. Maya made the decision before the room could turn into a family debate. Small group. Ruth drives. Andre comes because Earl knows him. Caleb comes because Evelyn spoke to him. I go. Everyone else stays and keeps copying. Ortiz was not there. That bothered Maya. Not because she wanted permission, but because she knew Harlan's report was already moving through official channels. Every hour mattered. The barber shop sat under a faded red awning with Earl's cuts painted in white letters on the window. Inside, old men watched a muted sports channel while pretending not to watch the street. The smell of talcum powder, clipper oil, and aftershave hit Maya as soon as she entered. Earl Franklin, 63, stood behind the first chair with clippers in his hand. Andre, if you're here for a trim, you picked a bad time. Andre swallowed. Mr. Earl, we need your camera footage. Earl looked at Maya, then Caleb. His friendly face closed. No. Ruth stepped forward. Earl. No, Miss Ruth. I know what's going on. I know what they did to Evelyn's house. I know Harlan's been riding up and down this street like he owns the asphalt. But I am not putting a target on this shop. Caleb spoke quietly. Evelyn said your camera saw something. Earl's hand tightened around the clippers. Evelyn should have kept my name out of it. Maya stepped closer, but not too close. She was trying to protect the neighborhood. And who protects me when you leave? Earl snapped. The old men in the chairs went silent. Maya did not answer quickly. She let the truth be ugly before she touched it. No one person can, she said. That's why they isolate people first. Earl looked away. You can say no, Maya continued. But if the footage shows what we think it shows, your silence does not keep you safe. It only keeps them comfortable. Earl laughed bitterly. You talk real clean for somebody whose house they just tore open. My mother taught English. That caught him off guard. Ruth softened her voice. Earl, Miss Evelyn sat in that chair after school board meetings and brought you peach cobbler every Christmas. Earl closed his eyes. Don't do that. She stood for everybody, Ruth said, even when she was scared. For a long moment, the only sound was the sports announcer on mute and the buzz of fluorescent lights. Then one of the old men in the second chair, Mr. Lyle Jenkins, 81, and wrapped in a barber cape, said, Earl, if you let fear cut your tongue out, don't complain when your mouth goes empty. Earl stared at him. You always got to say things like a Bible verse that got lost? Mr. Jenkins shrugged under the cape. I'm old. That's my job. A few men chuckled. The fear loosened. Earl set the clippers down. Back office. The office was cramped, lined with invoices, hair product boxes, and a small monitor connected to the security system. Earl pulled up archived footage from 3 weeks earlier. The image was grainy but clear enough. Evelyn on her porch, Harlan below her, Doyle near the patrol car, and a tall man in a gray suit standing beside a black SUV, arms folded, watching. Caleb leaned toward the screen. That's Graham Pike. Maya looked at him. Who? Security consultant. Former investigator. Works for Southern Crown now. On the footage, Harlan pointed toward Evelyn's door. Pike said something to Doyle. Doyle took an envelope from the SUV and slid it under his clipboard. Andre whispered, That's what I saw. Earl's voice went rough. Can you hear audio? He clicked another file. Static filled the room. Then Harlan's voice, low but recognizable. Old houses get dangerous fast when old women get stubborn. Ruth covered her mouth. Maya's eyes did not move from the screen. Copy it, she said. Earl inserted a drive. The progress bar crawled across the monitor. 52%. 71. Ninety. A crash sounded from the front of the shop. Earl froze. A man shouted, "City inspection." Maya grabbed the drive the moment the copy completed. Back door. Earl whispered, "There isn't one." The office had one small window, painted shut. Heavy footsteps crossed the shop. Maya slipped the drive into her coat lining and turned toward the door. "Then we walk out the front like customers." Caleb stared. "With them right there?" Maya opened the office door. "Yes," she said. "And nobody runs unless they want to look guilty." The barbershop had gone still in the way a room goes still when every man inside knows the law has entered. But none of them believes justice came with it. A city inspector stood near the front counter with Officer Miles Creed at his shoulder, and Officer Ray Dutton filling the doorway behind them like a threat too large to miss. The inspector was a thin man in a wrinkled shirt, holding a tablet he did not look comfortable carrying. Creed's eyes moved over the mirrors, the chairs, the waiting men, then landed on Maya as she stepped out of the back office with Ruth, Andre, Caleb, and Earl. Dutton smiled when he saw her. "Well, look at that," he said. "Trouble gets haircuts now." Maya kept walking. Earl moved behind the first chair, trying to look like a man who had not just copied evidence that could burn half the town. His hand found the clippers. Though no one was waiting for a cut, the inspector cleared his throat. "We received a complaint about electrical hazards and improper storage of chemicals." Mr. Lyle Jenkins, still wearing the barber cape, lifted one eyebrow. "Chemicals?" "Earl's strongest chemical is that aftershave that smells like a funeral home." No one laughed. Not fully, but the old men shifted. Fear made room for irritation, and irritation was more useful. Creed ignored him. "Everyone needs to step outside while the inspection is conducted." Earl's mouth opened. Maya spoke first. "Do you have an emergency closure order?" Creed turned slowly. "This does not concern you." "It does if you are removing witnesses from a business immediately after we requested security footage related to police misconduct." The inspector glanced at Creed. That glance said too much. Creed's jaw tightened. "You always use big words when you're obstructing?" Maya looked at the tablet in the inspector's hand. "What time was the complaint filed?" The inspector swallowed. "I don't have to answer that." "You do if you are creating a record." Dutton stepped forward. "Girl, you just don't learn." Ruth lifted her phone from waist level, already recording. "Some of us learn plenty." Dutton looked at her. "Ma'am, I'd put that down." Ruth smiled without warmth. "I've been told that by better men than you." Caleb took half a step to the side, enough to make himself visible, but not enough to provoke. "Caleb Brooks, Channel 6. Are you ordering a public business cleared without showing an emergency order?" Creed's eyes flicked toward Caleb. "You recording?" "Not yet." "Good. Would you like me to?" The question hung there. Creed hated cameras that did not belong to him. Dutton hated witnesses. The inspector looked as if he hated his life. Maya stopped near the front chair. "Mr. Franklin has customers. Unless you have a lawful closure order, you can inspect without clearing the room." Creed leaned closer. "You giving legal advice now?" "No. I'm giving you a chance to behave like you know the law before this becomes another exhibit." Earl stared at Maya, then at Creed, then at the old men in the chairs. Something changed in his face. Not courage exactly. Courage was too clean a word. This was embarrassment turning into backbone. "My shop stays open," Earl said. "You want to inspect? Inspect. You want everybody outside? Bring paper with a judge's name on it." Dutton laughed once. "You people really got brave overnight." Mr. Jenkins spoke from under the cape. "No. We got tired in public. That one landed." The inspector tapped at his tablet, pretending to read. "I can proceed without clearing the premises." Creed shot him a look. The inspector did not look back. Maya walked toward the door. The copied drive rested inside the lining of her coat, a tiny square of truth against her ribs. She kept her pace even. Ruth followed. Andre kept his hands out of his pockets. Caleb waited until Earl gave him a small nod, then came last. Dutton blocked part of the doorway. Maya stopped inches from him. He lowered his voice. You think whatever you took from that office is going to save you? Maya did not blink. Move. Or what? Or you'll be blocking a woman from leaving a public business while Mrs. Patterson records. Mr. Brooks watches. And your partner's false inspection is still active behind you. Dutton looked at Ruth's phone, then at Caleb. Then he stepped aside. Not because he was afraid of Maya. Not yet. Because cowards who wear power are careful when their script is not ready. Outside, the street felt too bright. Ruth exhaled as if she had been holding her breath since the back office. Andre whispered, "We got it." Maya's eyes stayed on the barbershop window. Creed was watching them from inside. "Not until we copy it." Caleb gestured toward his car. "I have a laptop." "No," Maya said. "Too obvious." Ruth straightened. "My house." Maya shook her head. Andre said, "Hardware store has a photo kiosk. Self-service, USB ports. Manager lets me use the office computer if I ask." Maya looked at him. "Cameras? Inside and outside." "Good." Caleb frowned. "Good? If someone follows, we want the building to remember them." They drove separately. Ruth took Maya and Andre. Caleb followed 2 cars back. The hardware store sat on the edge of Cedar Hollow, a family-owned place with paint cans stacked in the windows and an American flag faded by too many summers. The manager, a woman named Patricia Knox, was 58 and knew Andre well enough to frown the moment she saw his face. "What happened?" she asked. Andre said, "Need the office computer. It matters." Patricia looked at Maya, then at Ruth. "How much trouble?" Ruth answered, "The kind that was already coming." Patricia unlocked the small office. Maya copied the drive 3 times. 1 to Caleb's encrypted storage, 1 to Ruth's cloud account, under a folder named Church Recipes, because Ruth insisted no corrupt man would ever look there first. 1 to a new flash drive. Patricia sold them for cash and refused to charge tax on, muttering, "Let the state earn it today." They watched the video once. The footage was grainy but damning. Harlan's voice was low, clear enough. Evelyn's was thinner than Maya remembered, but steady. "My home is not unsafe," Evelyn said. "You know that." Harlan leaned on the porch rail. "Houses get unsafe when owners get stubborn." Pike, the man in the gray suit, stood near the SUV and checked his watch like intimidation bored him. Doyle took the envelope and tucked it under the clipboard. Caleb's face had gone pale. "This is enough for a story." Maya looked at him. "It is enough for them to panic." Right on cue, Caleb's phone began buzzing. Then Ruth's. Then Patricia's office phone rang at the front desk. Caleb checked his screen and cursed softly. "What?" Ruth asked. He turned the phone toward them. The headline from a local news site had already gone live. "Grieving daughter accused of assaulting Greenville officers during lawful demolition dispute." Below it was a still image from the edited video. Maya's hand on Holt's wrist. Dutton stumbling near the patrol car. The frame cut perfectly to hide Holt grabbing her first. Ruth whispered, "They cut it." Andre's voice shook. "They made it look like you started it." Caleb scrolled. Harlan gave a statement. The video loaded. Sergeant Cole Harlan stood outside the Greenville Police Department, his uniform neat, his face arranged into solemn concern. "I don't want to speak harshly about a young woman who just lost her mother," Harlan said. "Grief can make people act in ways they normally wouldn't. But grief does not give anyone the right to attack officers, obstruct lawful city work, or spread dangerous accusations against public servants." Maya watched without expression. Harlan continued, "We pray Miss Williams gets the help she needs. But Greenville cannot allow anger, misinformation, and outside agitation to put neighborhoods at risk." Patricia Knox made a sound of disgust. "Outside agitation? She's Evelyn's daughter." Caleb looked at Maya. "They're framing you before we can frame them." "No," Maya said. "They're committing to a lie before they know what we have." Ruth was still staring at the screen. "People will believe him." "Some will," Maya said. "That doesn't bother you. It matters. Bothering me does not help." Andre looked young for the first time all day. "What do we do?" Maya removed the copied drive and handed 1 copy to Caleb. You verify before publishing. No emotion, no guessing. Timeline, video, documents, names. If one sentence is wrong, they use it to bury everything. Caleb nodded. Understood. She handed the second drive to Ruth. You do not keep this at home. Ruth clutched it. Where? Somewhere boring. Patricia lifted one hand. I've got a safe under register too. Been there since my daddy ran this place. Only thing in it now is old payroll records and my divorce papers. Ruth looked at Maya. Maya nodded. The front bell jingled. Everyone turned toward the office door. Through the small interior window, Maya saw the white Southern Crown pickup pull into the parking lot. 2 men got out. Not police, not construction workers. Khaki pants, polo shirts, clean shoes. One carried a clipboard. Patricia's mouth hardened. They're coming in. Maya closed the laptop and wiped the recent file list. Everyone normal. Ruth gave a thin smile. Baby, at my age, normal is a performance. The 2 men entered the store and began pretending to browse paint rollers. Caleb slipped his phone into his pocket. Andre walked toward the front like an employee remembering he had a job. Ruth stepped out with the calm dignity of a woman shopping for light bulbs after the world ended. Maya stayed in the office long enough to look once more at Harlan's headline on Caleb's phone. The lie had a head start, but now, the truth had copies. The men from Southern Crown did not buy anything. They drifted through the hardware store with clipboards in their hands and smiles that never reached their eyes. One stopped near the paint counter and asked Patricia Knox whether the building had ever been inspected for asbestos. The other stood by the front window and looked out at Ruth's car, then Caleb's, then the street beyond them. Maya watched from the office doorway with one shoulder against the frame. The taller man finally picked up a roll of painter's tape, turned it in his hand, and set it back in the wrong bin. Patricia saw it. If you're not buying, don't rearrange my store. He smiled. Just browsing. Browsing is for customers. The second man glanced at Maya. We're with Southern Crown Development. We're conducting community outreach. Ruth stepped beside the counter, holding a package of light bulbs she had no intention of buying. Funny. Most outreach doesn't come with 2 men counting cars in the parking lot. The man's smile tightened. Ma'am, our company is committed to a safer and more prosperous Greenville. Patricia snorted. Prosperous for who? Maya said nothing. The men wanted reaction. They wanted a raised voice, a sharp word, a clip they could feed back into Harlan's story about anger and instability. She gave them the same thing she had given Harlan at the Yellow House. A clean, cold silence. It bothered them. The taller man shifted his clipboard to his left hand. Miss Williams. Is it? Maya looked at him. I'm Aaron Vale, Community Liaison for Southern Crown. We understand emotions are running high after the unfortunate situation at your mother's property. Unfortunate, Ruth repeated. Aaron kept his eyes on Maya. We'd hate for misinformation, to make things harder for everyone. Southern Crown has resources, relocation assistance, counseling referrals, legal clarity. Sometimes the best path forward is not confrontation. Maya tilted her head slightly. Who told you I was here? Aaron's smile did not move. Cedar Hollow is a close community. That wasn't an answer. No, he said. It was a polite one. Patricia stepped closer to the register. You 2 can outreach yourselves right back through that door. The second man's jaw tightened. No need to be hostile. You came into my store to intimidate my customers. We came to support the community. Maya finally spoke. Then support it from outside. Aaron looked at her a long second. You're making powerful enemies. Maya's voice stayed calm. No, I'm identifying them. Ruth's mouth twitched, but she did not smile. Not fully. The bell over the door jingled as Andre returned from the stockroom wearing his hardware store vest. He had taken the long way around, Maya noticed. Smart. He looked at the 2 men, then at Patricia. Need me up front? Patricia folded her arms. Only if these gentlemen forgot where the exit is. Aaron placed a business card on the counter. If anyone wants to discuss options before more damage is done, call me. Maya picked up the card with 2 fingers and read the name, phone number, and Southern Crown logo. She did not throw it away. She slipped it into her notebook. Aaron's smile faded. Keeping souvenirs? Receipts. The two men left. Through the window, everyone watched them climb into the white pickup. Aaron made a call before pulling out of the parking lot. Caleb exhaled. They're moving fast. Maya looked at the business card. They're nervous. Andre stepped closer. Because of the video? Because they don't know how many copies exist. Ruth looked toward the safe under register 2. 3. Counting what we stored here. 4. Caleb said. My upload finished. Maya looked at him sharply. Where? Encrypted server. Private. Not published. Good. Patricia locked the front door and flipped the sign to closed, though it was still mid-afternoon. I want that safe moved. No, Maya said. Leave it. Patricia stared at her. You want the evidence sitting here? I want them to think it might be. If they don't know where the real copies are, they have to chase shadows. Caleb nodded slowly. Spread their attention. Spread their mistakes, Maya said. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number again. She rejected the call. A text appeared seconds later. You should have left. No signature. Ruth read it over Maya's shoulder. Harlan? Maybe. Another message came. Tomorrow morning, the whole city will know what kind of woman you are. Maya stared at the screen. Patricia's face went hard. What does that mean? It means the story is about to widen. Caleb opened his phone. Let me check the local feeds. He found it within 2 minutes. A teaser from Channel 11. Not Caleb's station. Mayor Whitcomb. To address Cedar Hollow safety concerns. At 6 p.m. Sources say city leaders are responding to violent obstruction by a local resident during emergency demolition efforts. Ruth gripped the edge of the counter. They're putting the mayor on TV? Of course they are, Caleb said bitterly. Harlan gives the police version. Whitcomb gives the respectable version. Same lie. Better suit. Maya looked out at the parking lot where the Southern Crown truck had been. Where is the press conference? City Hall steps, Caleb said. Public safety backdrop. Flags. Police behind him if he can arrange it. Patricia muttered. Lord, I hate theater. No, Maya said. Theater tells you where everyone stands. Caleb looked at her. You want to go? Not yet. Ruth turned. Maya, they're going to bury you on live television. They're going to try. You need to defend yourself. No. I need to know what lie they choose. That stopped Ruth. Maya's eyes moved from Caleb's phone to the timeline in her notebook. Every lie is a commitment. Once they say it publicly, they have to protect it. That forces them to move. Caleb studied her again with that same suspicion Ortiz had worn. You think like an investigator. Maya closed the notebook. I think like my mother's daughter. The answer was true enough to end the question. They left the hardware store in pairs. Ruth drove Maya back toward Cedar Hollow. Caleb headed to his station, promising to verify the barbershop footage and donation records before the 6 o'clock broadcast. Andre stayed behind with Patricia, who gave him instructions to check every camera, lock the back door, and call her before he took out the trash. On the ride back, Ruth kept both hands on the wheel. You ever going to tell me what your mother meant by darkness? She asked. Maya watched the houses slide past. Not today. That bad? Yes. Ruth nodded, accepting the answer like a casserole dish too hot to touch without mitts. Then I won't ask again today. At Evelyn's house, a bright orange notice had been nailed to the front door. Maya was out of the car before Ruth fully stopped. The paper snapped in the wind against the damaged wood. Emergency safety order. Structure declared immediate hazard. Demolition authorized within 72 hours. At the bottom was Mayor Leonard Whitcomb's signature. Ruth came up behind her. Ortiz said it was paused. Maya read the notice again. They overrode it. Can they do that? Legally? Maybe under narrow emergency conditions. And falsely? Maya pulled out her phone and photographed every inch of the paper. With the right people signing, false things get very temporary legs. A voice called from the sidewalk. Miss Williams? A young reporter from Channel 11 stood near the curb with a cameraman already lifting his camera. She was maybe 30, polished, alert, and hungry for a clean angle. Maya did not move toward her. The reporter began anyway. Councilman sources say you assaulted officers and are now interfering with a lawful emergency order. Would you like to respond? Ruth snapped. Councilman sources? Girl, did you even look at the house? The camera shifted toward Ruth. Maya touched Ruth's arm lightly. No. Ruth swallowed the rest. The reporter tried again. Miss Williams, some residents are concerned your actions could delay safety improvements in Cedar Hollow. Maya looked at the lens. Not the reporter. The lens. Who told you to be here before the notice was dry? The reporter blinked. We monitor public filings. This notice is not yet in the public system. The cameraman lowered the camera a fraction. The reporter's confidence cracked. We received information. From the mayor's office? No answer. From Sergeant Harlan? Still no answer. Maya stepped close enough that the microphone caught her clearly, but not close enough to seem aggressive. Then here is my response. My mother's house was damaged by the same officers. Now call. The demolition order cites an inspector who retired 6 months ago. If your station airs only the city's version after hearing that, you are not reporting news. You are carrying water. Ruth whispered. Amen. The reporter's face flushed. Are you accusing us of bias? I'm giving you a chance not to prove it. The cameraman looked at the reporter, waiting. Maya turned away first. That mattered. She did not storm off. She ended the exchange. Inside the house, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was Ortiz. I saw the emergency order, Ortiz said without greeting. I did not approve this. I assumed. The mayor's office is claiming immediate collapse risk. They attached photos. Photos from after Harlan's officers damaged the house? That is what I need to prove. I have my own photos from yesterday and this morning. Send them. Maya hesitated. Ortiz heard it. I know you don't trust the route. Send copies. Not originals. Maya did. Ortiz continued. Listen carefully. Whitcomb is speaking at 6. My advice is stay away from City Hall tonight. They want footage of you angry. I know. Do you? Maya looked at the orange notice on the door. Yes. After the call, Maya stood in the dark living room with dust on her shoes and a demolition order in her hand. Outside, Ruth answered her phone. Her voice changed after the first hello. Maya, she called. Maya stepped back onto the porch. Ruth's face had gone pale. That was Louise. Henry just got a notice, too. So did Marcia. Thomas has one on his door. Maya looked down Cedar Hollow Lane. Orange papers glowed on doors like warning flames. One house would have been cruelty. 4 houses was strategy. The 6 o'clock press conference had not even begun, and Whitcomb was already clearing the board. By 5:30, Cedar Hollow looked like a street under sentence. Orange notices shivered on doors from one end of the block to the other. Evelyn Williams's house, Henry and Louise Carter's brick ranch, Marcia Green's blue house, Thomas Reed's place with the porch steps he had built himself. Each notice used the same language: immediate hazard, emergency authority, public safety, 72 hours. Clean words again. Clean words were becoming the dirtiest things in Greenville. Ruth Patterson stood in Maya's yard with her phone in one hand and her other hand pressed against her chest. Neighbors moved from porch to porch, reading notices, calling relatives, whispering as if loud voices might make the papers more real. Henry Carter came down his steps with Louise holding his arm. Marcia Green stood in her doorway with Danielle beside her. Thomas Reed stared at his notice like it had insulted his dead wife. Maya photographed every door, not just the notices, the hinges, the nail marks, the time, the faces of the homeowners standing beside them. Evidence was not one thing. It was context. It was pattern. It was the difference between 4 frightened families and 1 coordinated strike. Caleb Brooks called at 5:42. They're setting up at City Hall, he said. Whitcomb, Harlan, 2 council members, Southern Crown people in the back. Channel 11 is there. Channel 4 too. Are you live? My station won't let me near it. I'm outside with my own camera. Good. That's not what my blood pressure says. Keep recording. Caleb was quiet for half a second. Maya, they're going to say your name. I know. They're going to make you the reason these houses are unsafe. I know. You have a response ready? Maya looked at Evelyn's ruined doorway. Not for them. Then, for who? For the record. At 6 o'clock, half of Cedar Hollow watched from phones, tablets, old televisions, and Ruth Patterson's living room. where neighbors had crowded in shoulder to shoulder. Maya stood near the back wall, away from the window. Evelyn's Bible rested on Ruth's coffee table, beside the cracked photograph and the folded emergency order. Mayor Leonard Whitcomb appeared on screen in a navy suit, standing before the tall columns of City Hall. Behind him were flags, uniformed officers, and a blue banner that read, "Greenville Public Safety Update." He looked sad. That was the first lie. "My fellow citizens," Whitcomb began. "Today has been painful for all of us who love Greenville," Ruth muttered. "Here we go," Whitcomb continued smoothly. The Cedar Renewal Corridor was designed to protect families, improve aging infrastructure, and bring opportunity to a neighborhood too long neglected. Unfortunately, recent events have placed residents and city workers at risk. The camera shifted to Harlan. He stood with his hands folded in front of him, face grave, badge bright. The same man who had driven a crowbar into Evelyn's front door now looked like he was attending a funeral for the truth. Whitcomb said, "A local resident, Miss Maya Williams, grieving and understandably emotional after the death of her mother, has engaged in conduct that interferes with lawful emergency operations." Marcia's voice came from the couch. "He says grieving like it's a disease." On screen, Whitcomb lifted a paper. "Additional inspections have confirmed that multiple structures on Cedar Hollow Lane present immediate hazards. We cannot allow misinformation, intimidation, or violence against officers to delay necessary safety action." Thomas Reed stood abruptly. "Multiple structures? He means us." Louise pulled him back down. "Thomas." Harlan stepped to the microphone. Maya watched his face, not his words. Words could be polished. Faces leaked. "Yesterday," Harlan said, "my officers attempted to carry out a lawful order at the Williams property. Miss Williams assaulted 2 officers and made threatening statements. We showed restraint because we understand grief. But restraint should not be mistaken for weakness." Ruth's phone buzzed nonstop with messages from people watching the broadcast. Harlan leaned in slightly. "Let me be clear. No one in Greenville is above the law. Not activists, not agitators, not people who think race or emotion gives them permission to endanger a community." The room went cold. There it was. The hook under the table. He had not said the slur. He addressed it for church. But everyone in Ruth's living room heard it. Maya did not move. If you have ever watched a man lie about you in public, you know the body wants to answer before the mind is ready. It wants to shout. It wants to point. It wants to break the screen. That is what men like Harlan count on. They light the match, then call you fire. Maya let the match burn in his own hand. Caleb's livestream notification appeared on Ruth's tablet. Ruth tapped it open. The view was shaky at first, then settled from the side of City Hall. Caleb's voice came low and controlled. "This is Caleb Brooks reporting independently from Greenville City Hall. Mayor Whitcomb has just connected emergency demolition orders in Cedar Hollow to alleged violence by Maya Williams. Channel 6 has not yet aired the video, Mrs. Ruth Patterson recorded showing an officer grabbing Williams first. At the City Hall microphone, a reporter asked, "Sergeant Harlan, are body cam recordings available?" Harlan did not blink. "All relevant footage is under review," Maya said quietly. "Relevant." Ruth looked up. "What?" "That means edited." A second reporter asked Whitcomb whether Southern Crown Development stood to benefit from the demolitions. Whitcomb smiled with patient disappointment. Southern Crown is one of several community partners committed to Greenville's future. It is irresponsible to turn public safety into a conspiracy theory. Behind him, Aaron Vale from Southern Crown stood half-hidden near the steps. Maya pointed at the screen. "Ruth." Ruth lifted her phone and took a picture of the TV. "Got him." The press conference ended with Whitcomb announcing that emergency safety enforcement would begin immediately in 72 hours unless residents complied with relocation directives. Complied. Not appealed. Not disputed. Complied. The livestream cut off a minute later. The room erupted. Henry wanted to call a lawyer he could not afford. Marcia wanted to march to City Hall. Thomas wanted to tear the notice off his door and mail it back in pieces. Danielle said her classmates were already sharing the edited video. Andre texted that the hardware store had received 2 anonymous complaints about code violations since the Southern Crown men left. Maya let the voices rise. then lifted one hand. Stop. It was not loud. It worked anyway. We do not chase every fire they start, she said. That is how they exhaust us. Marcia folded her arms. So we just sit here while they call us liars? No. We answer with order, Thomas snapped. Order is what they're using against us. Then we use it better. Maya turned to Ruth. Send Caleb the clip of Holt grabbing me. Full version, no edits. Send Ortiz copies of every orange notice. Marcia, Danielle, write down the time the notice appeared and who saw it first. Henry, Louise, Thomas, photograph your houses tonight from every side. If they claim immediate hazard, we show condition before they touch anything. Louise nodded, already reaching for her purse where she kept a small notebook. Ruth asked, And you? Maya looked toward the door. I'm going to my mother's house. Ruth's eyes widened. No, not alone. I won't be alone. She opened the front door. Half the room followed her onto the porch. Cedar Hollow Lane was no longer quiet. People stood outside their homes. Porch lights burned. Phones were raised. The orange notices glowed under the evening sky like small fires that had not learned to spread yet. At Evelyn's house, a patrol car rolled to a stop. Then another. Then a black SUV. Sergeant Cole Harlan stepped out first. Dutton came behind him. Miles Creed sat in the second car with his laptop open. Graham Pike emerged from the SUV in a gray suit, calm as a man arriving for a business dinner. Harlan looked down the street until he found Maya. His smile returned. There she is, he called. Right on time. Maya walked toward him without hurrying. Ruth followed with her phone recording. Caleb's live stream flickered back on from somewhere near the corner. Neighbors lined both sides of the street, not cheering, not shouting, just watching. Harlan held up a document. Emergency enforcement begins now, he said. You are ordered to vacate the property. Maya stopped at the edge of the yard. The order says 72 hours. Updated directive, Harlan said. Immediate danger. Signed by who? Harlan grinned. People above your reading level. Pike watched Maya more carefully than Harlan did. His eyes narrowed, taking inventory. Maya pointed to Ruth's phone. You're being recorded. Harlan spread his arms. Good. Let everybody see how patient we are. Then he stepped closer, lowering his voice just enough to make it feel personal while keeping the performance alive. Last chance, little girl. Walk away. Maya looked at the broken yellow house, then at the Bible visible through Ruth's front window where she had left it on the coffee table, then back at Harlan. No. Harlan sighed theatrically. Miss Williams, you are under arrest for obstruction of emergency operations and violation of a lawful safety order. Ruth gasped. Marcia shouted from down the street. She didn't do anything. Harlan's smile widened. That is what court is for. Dutton moved in with cuffs. Maya did not resist. She turned her wrists outward before he could twist them, denying him even the satisfaction of roughness. Metal closed around her hands. Pike's gaze sharpened at that small movement. He saw something then. Not enough, but something. Harlan leaned near her ear as Dutton guided her toward the patrol car. I told you, he murmured. One line. Maya looked straight ahead. No, she said. You wrote more than one. For the first time, Pike's expression changed. Behind them, an engine rumbled at the end of the block. A demolition truck turned onto Cedar Hollow Lane. City Hall looked different at night. In daylight, it was columns, flags, polished stone, and smiling photographs on campaign mailers. At night, under white floodlights and television cameras, it looked more like a stage where powerful men came to bless their own version of events before the truth could find a microphone. Mayor Leonard Whitcomb stood near the front steps with Sergeant Cole Harlan at his right, and Graham Pike half a step behind him. Aaron Vale from Southern Crown hovered near the edge of the press line. Two council members whispered together beneath the flags. Reporters adjusted tripods. Microphones waited like a row of small black mouths. Whitcomb looked pleased with himself. That was his mistake. He believed the house was gone. The daughter was in custody. The neighborhood was frightened, and the narrative had hardened before anyone could crack it. Men like Whitcomb did not fear grief. They feared documents. And for most of his career, he had been careful to keep documents buried under procedures, committees, emergency orders, and friendly words like renewal. At 8:59 p.m., he stepped to the microphone. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," he began. "Today's emergency action in Cedar Hollow was difficult, but necessary. Our administration will never apologize for protecting lives." A black SUV turned the corner, then another. They did not use sirens. They did not need to. Maya stepped from Detective Ortiz's unmarked sedan just behind them. She carried Evelyn's Bible in one hand and the cracked photograph in the other. The ruined lilies had been placed in a clean evidence bag, held now by an agent in a dark jacket. Ortiz walked beside Maya, her face set, her badge visible. A murmur moved through the reporters. Whitcomb saw her. For the first time that night, his expression slipped. Harlan turned sharply. His eyes went first to Maya's free hands. No cuffs. Then to Ortiz. Then to the men and women getting out of the black SUVs. Federal agents. Pike saw it too. And unlike Harlan, he understood faster. His posture changed by 1 inch. Not much. Just enough for Maya to know he was measuring exits. Whitcomb tried to keep speaking. "As I was saying, public safety requires..." "Maya Williams," a reporter called out. "Were you released?" Another asked. "Are those FBI agents?" Harlan stepped toward Maya. "She is not supposed to be here." One of the agents, a broad-shouldered woman in a navy suit, moved in front of him with calm authority. "Sergeant Harlan, step back." His face flushed. "This is a municipal press briefing." "No," Maya said. The word cut across the steps. Every camera turned. Maya walked forward, not to the microphone yet, but close enough for the lights to catch the dust, still clinging to the hem of her coat. She looked at Whitcomb, then Harlan, then Pike. "This is a crime scene that got tired of waiting for permission." The press line erupted. Whitcomb raised both hands. "Miss Williams, I understand you are emotional, but this is not the place for accusations." Maya looked at him. "You keep using grief like a muzzle." Whitcomb's smile tightened. "I am trying to show compassion. My mother is dead. Her house is rubble. 4 families on Cedar Hollow received emergency notices today, after your office overrode an active review. Do not stand under a flag and call that compassion." Harlan stepped toward the microphone. "This is exactly the kind of unstable behavior we warned about." The female agent turned to him. "Sergeant, you are advised not to make further statements." Harlan laughed in disbelief. "Advised by who?" She opened a leather credential case. "Special Agent Denise Harrington, FBI Public Corruption Unit." The words moved through the crowd like thunder that had taken its time arriving. Maya saw Harlan's face change. Not fear yet. Recognition. The kind that comes when a man realizes the room he thought he controlled has a door he never noticed. Agent Harrington looked to the reporters. "The FBI is executing federal warrants tonight related to an active investigation involving public corruption, unlawful coercion, obstruction, and potential conspiracy connected to property seizures in Cedar Hollow." Whitcomb's voice rose. "This is outrageous. My office has cooperated with every lawful process." Maya stepped to the microphone before he could reclaim it. "My name is Maya Evelyn Williams," she said. "I am the daughter of Evelyn Williams, a retired elementary school teacher who lived 40 years at 418 Cedar Hollow Lane. This afternoon, her home was demolished under an emergency order signed by Mayor Leonard Whitcomb. That order relied on damage created by officers under Sergeant Cole Harlan during a disputed demolition attempt the day before." Harlan shook his head. "Lie." Maya did not look at him. "Yesterday, Sergeant Harlan claimed I assaulted officers. Full video from Mrs. Ruth Patterson shows Officer Travis Holt grabbed me first. I used the minimum force necessary to stop an unlawful seizure and immediately raised my hands. That video has been preserved." Caleb Brooks pushed forward with his camera rolling. Channel 11's reporter looked pale. Maya continued. "Documents collected from Cedar Hollow residents show a repeated sequence: buyout offer, refusal, inspection, violation, police pressure, second offer, emergency notice. The shell companies involved share addresses and legal representation connected to Southern Crown Development." Whitcomb snapped. "Those are reckless allegations." Agent Harrington looked at him. "Mayor, You will have an opportunity to respond through counsel. That landed harder than a shout. Maya opened Evelyn's Bible and removed a folded page from inside. She did not need it, but holding it steadied her. My mother knew this pattern before I came home. She recorded dates, names, license plates, and meetings. She hid a memory card inside the ribbon of the flowers meant for her funeral, because she knew grief was the one thing Harlan's men would not search carefully. Pike's eyes moved to the evidence bag. Too late. Agent Harrington nodded to another agent, who held up a tablet connected to portable speakers. Evelyn Williams's voice came through City Hall. My name is Evelyn Williams. I live at 418 Cedar Hollow Lane. If this video is being watched, then something has happened that made my notes matter more than my fear. The steps went silent. Even the reporters stopped shouting. The video played only excerpts. Evelyn naming Harlan. Evelyn identifying Doyle taking envelopes from Graham Pike. Evelyn saying, Deputy Inspector Allen signed violations before inspections. Then, the audio. Whitcomb's own voice. Cedar Hollow has to look dangerous before council can act. I don't care how you get there, Cole. Just keep it contained. Harlan's reply, contained is what I do. No one moved. For a moment, Greenville heard itself without makeup. Whitcomb's face lost color. That recording is fabricated. Agent Harrington turned toward him. Mayor Whitcomb, agents are executing warrants at your office, Southern Crown's Greenville office, and the homes and workspaces of several involved officials. You are not under arrest at this moment, but you are not free to destroy, alter, or remove any records. Pike stepped backward. Maya saw it. So did Ortiz. Mr. Pike, Ortiz said. He stopped. An agent moved toward him. Graham Pike, we have a warrant for your phone and company devices. Pike smiled thinly. You have no idea how complicated this is. Maya looked at him. That is what guilty men call paperwork. Harlan tried to leave the steps. Agent Harrington's partner blocked him. Sergeant Cole Harlan, the agent said. You are being detained pending execution of a federal warrant. Harlan's mask broke completely. For what? Doing my job? Keeping order? Maya finally looked at him. No, she said. For mistaking a badge for ownership. He stared at her with raw hatred, the kind that had been waiting under every joke, every threat, every sweetheart and little girl. You think this makes you safe? He spat. Maya stepped closer, close enough that the microphones caught her answer. No, it makes you visible. The cuffs came out. This time, they were not for her. Dutton was detained near a patrol car. Creed tried to argue about body cam procedure until an agent asked for his laptop. Doyle went gray when Andre Miller's statement and Earl Franklin's footage were mentioned. Briggs lowered his eyes and said nothing. Ben Sutter, the youngest officer, stood at the edge of the steps trembling as if the ground had finally asked him what kind of man he planned to become. Maya saw him. He saw her. I didn't know it went that far, Ben said, voice barely audible. Maya's face did not soften, but her answer was quiet. Then start telling the truth before it goes farther. By 10:30, the press conference had become something else entirely. A mayor escorted inside by federal agents, a developer's consultant, separated from his phone, a police sergeant, in cuffs, reporters speaking into cameras with the stunned urgency of people who had arrived for theater and found evidence. Caleb Brooks stood near Maya after most of the shouting settled. I'm going live in 5, he said. Do you want to say anything else? Maya looked toward Cedar Hollow, though it could not be seen from City Hall. Yes, Caleb lifted his camera. Maya faced it. My mother was not confused. She was not difficult. She was not standing in the way of progress. She was standing in the way of theft. So were Henry and Louise Carter. So were Marcia Green, Thomas Reed, Ruth Patterson, Andre Miller, Reverend Price, Earl Franklin, and every resident told to be quiet because someone with money had plans for their land. Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. Justice is not loud every day. Sometimes it is an old woman writing down a license plate. Sometimes it is a neighbor recording from behind a curtain. Sometimes it is a frightened witness choosing to sign one page. Sometimes it is a mother hiding truth in funeral flowers. because she knows her daughter will carry them home. Caleb's eyes were wet behind the camera. Maya looked straight into the lens. To Cedar Hollow, keep your receipts. To Greenville, look closely at what gets called renewal. And to anyone wearing power like a weapon, understand this. People you underestimate still know how to remember. Months later, the rubble of Evelyn Williams's house became a foundation. Not for townhomes, not for a parking lot, not for another clean billboard promising a future without the people who had built the past. The community raised money. Churches donated. Lawyers worked pro bono. Caleb's reporting won attention he no longer cared to brag about. Detective Ortiz testified. Wallace wrote what he had seen. Ben Sutter became a cooperating witness. Southern Crown's project collapsed under subpoenas and public outrage. Mayor Whitcomb resigned before trial. Harlan's badge was taken. Then his freedom began to answer questions in court. On a spring morning, Cedar Hollow gathered where the yellow house once stood. A new sign stood beside the magnolia tree. The Evelyn Williams House of Justice. The building was modest. Meeting room, legal aid office, archive wall, a small classroom for seniors learning how to scan documents, record safely, and read city notices before fear could translate them into surrender. Ruth Patterson stood by the doorway with her phone ready, just in case history tried anything. Henry Carter told everyone the ramp was 2 inches too steep. Louise told him to hush and eat a sandwich. Marcia Green brought stew. Danielle wore her nursing pin. Andre helped Earl set up chairs. Reverend Price blessed the building with one hand on Evelyn's Bible. Maya stood beneath the magnolia tree holding the cracked photograph, now repaired but not hidden. The crack still crossed the glass faintly. She had chosen to leave it there. Some scars do not ruin a thing. They prove what it survived. Ruth came beside her. Your mama would be proud. Maya looked at the sign. The people. The open door. She would say the font is too small. Ruth laughed, then cried, then laughed again. Maya placed the photograph inside the new building on the archive wall, beneath Evelyn's handwritten words from the index card. Follow who profits when old people get tired. Outside, the magnolia leaves moved in the warm air. Cedar Hollow had not been saved by one woman. That was the lesson. It had been saved by a mother who kept records, a daughter who knew how to read them, neighbors who decided fear would no longer separate them, and a street that finally understood the power of standing close enough for their corners to connect. The 7 badges had come to bury a house. In the end, they built a witness. The lesson from Maya Williams's story is simple, but it is not small. Injustice grows strongest when people suffer alone, stay silent, and believe no one will listen. But truth has a way of surviving in receipts, recordings, memories, and the courage of ordinary people who refuse to be erased. One voice may be ignored, but when neighbors stand together, fear loses its power. Justice may come late, but it comes closer every time someone chooses to tell the truth. Thank you for listening to this story until the very end. Your time, your attention, and your heart mean more than words can say. If this story moved you, please share your thoughts with us. Did the storytelling touch you? Was there a moment that stayed in your mind? Your feedback helps us tell these stories with more honesty, emotion, and meaning. And if you have a powerful true story, a family memory, or an inspiring experience about justice, courage, kindness, or standing up against unfairness, we would be honored if you shared it with our channel. Your story might become the next one that gives hope to someone who needs it. This video is a work of fiction created with the assistance of artificial intelligence. All characters, events, and situations are not real and do not represent any actual people or true stories. The content is intended for storytelling and emotional illustration only.